Chapter 275. Why don't you join my Nest-Chazarei sect? He patted his chest, with an expression that said, I'll protect you. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched as she reminded, I'm a dandelion spirit. I know. Chu nodded. My wife too. What a coincidence. Coincidence my ass. Cultivators and demons are incompatible, right? Little Tyrant even wanted to kill her the first time. Wasn't letting her enter a cultivation sect the same as courting death? Oh right. Chu nodded, as if she had just thought of this problem. Suddenly, she pulled Ji Yunshu's hand and conjured a seal with one hand. She wrote a few strokes on Ji Yunshu's palm and said loudly, All right, there's no problem now. He looked down and saw 3 words written neatly on his palm. I am a human. Zhu Yao glanced at him with a darkened expression. You think you're a human just by writing a word? Are you trying to be funny? If it works, can I change my surname to yours? Just as she was about to lose her temper, she suddenly felt that the aura of her whole body instantly converged, so the mark of a spiritual monster disappeared without a trace. It's really useful. Hero. Zhu Yao grabbed onto his hand, her face was filled with excitement. What was that mystic art you used earlier? Can you teach me? Actually, I didn't tell you, but my grandpa's surname is also Zhu. No, it's Chu. This was too magical. If she could learn this skill and write Li Gang on her palm in the future, wouldn't everyone have to call her dad? This is the spirit of words. Chu replied. It's not a spell. I obtained the inheritance by chance and was planning to pass it on to my wife. You. Then forget it. Holy shit, so it was a contract to sell myself. Martial Uncle Chu. The little tyrant tugged on Chu's sleeves. If Sect Master were to find out that you're randomly accepting disciples again, he would be very angry. Chu's face darkened. Anyway, he gets angry every other day. Just get used to it. No. Little tyrant shook his head. I'm saying that today is the day the mountain gate opens once every 10 years. If you're right. His eyes shone, as he pulled Zhu Yao and ran out. Where to? Before Zhu Yao could even react, she was pulled into a formation. A white light flashed. Not long after, she stood in front of a huge white stone. 2 words were written on it in flamboyant calligraphy, Su Yao. This was Nest-Chazarei Sect's mountain? Chu explained. Our sect has always been strict in accepting disciples. We are not allowed to accept disciples privately. Everyone who seeks to become an immortal must ascend the mountain gate by themselves. I say. This is a defensive magic artifact. This is a water-repelling talisman. This is a fire-repelling talisman. This is a body-lightening talisman. This is a chi-replenishing pill. He opened his storage bag and took out a bunch of things from inside, stuffing them all into her arms. You can do it. With these, you can definitely reach the top of the mountain. Actually, go, I'll wait for you on the mountain. When you become my disciple, no one will dare to bully you. I didn't think. Good luck, sister-in-law. Who's your sister-in-law? Chu slapped her on the back and pushed her into the huge rock. The hell, I never thought of joining Nest-Chazarei sect. Hey, do the Consumers Association know you're forcefully buying and selling like this? Zhu Yao simply felt a white light flash in front of her, and her entire being was sucked into that white light. In an instant, the scenery in front of her changed. In front of her was a large field of grass. However, there were already many people gathered there. Most of them were children around the age of 10 or so, some were alone. And there were also adults. Carrying a huge pile of things, she suddenly appeared in front of the crowd. In an instant, a large number of gazes swept towards her, and all of them revealed an expression as if they were looking at a scammer. Zhu Yao. Deity elders are here. Someone shouted out. The crowd instantly stirred, and began to squeeze forward. From afar, 2 disciples dressed in green robes flew over from the sky. Both of them had the cultivation of early-stage foundation. They did not land on the ground. Instead, they swept a glance at the crowd from above on their flying swords. When they saw Zhu Yao, they clearly paused, as though they were surprised that there was actually such an old talent. His expression stiffened for a moment, and then immediately returned to normal. Pointing to the 2 paths at the end of the field, he raised his voice and said, If you wish to join my Neschazarei sect, you must rely on your own strength to ascend the mountain. Wandering practitioners who already possess cultivation, take the path of righteousness on the right. Mortal disciples, take the path of righteousness on the left. Those who arrive at the main hall before sunset will be qualified. After saying that, he waved his hand. 2 barriers, one blue and one red, were erected on the 2 paths. They were most likely used to verify one's cultivation. The 2 disciples did not stop, as they turned around and flew away. The crowd immediately began to move. Zhu Yao was passively pushed away, and along the way, she dropped quite a few talismans and pellets. When she regained her senses, she had already been brought in front of the red barrier on the right. Just as she was about to step in, she saw a skinny and small figure from the corner of her eyes. A strange feeling instantly rose in the depths of her heart. That child. Had she seen him somewhere before? Fellow Taoist, hurry and go. If you don't enter now, it will be too late. Before she could even take a good look, the person behind her pushed her. Zhu Yao staggered in, and the scene in front of her changed again. She had arrived at the depths of a dense forest. It seemed like not only was that barrier able to differentiate cultivation level, it even had a random teleportation function. Raising her head, she saw that the hovering mountain, which was just inches away from her earlier, was now merely a small dot in the distance. The hell? Why was it spreading further and further? It would be strange if she could reach here before nightfall, right? She lowered her head and searched through the pile of items that Chu Chu had forcefully stuffed into her hands. She realized that everything was present, just that she did not have a transportation tool. As expected, the men of other clans were unreliable. She might as well give up. In any case, she did not want to join Neschazarei sect. Fellow Taoist, do you want to hitch a ride on my sleepless sword? A male voice suddenly sounded behind her. Turning around, she saw a middle-aged male practitioner. He was holding onto a transportation tool, and he was currently looking at the talisman in her hands with a smile. Zhu Yao subconsciously tightened her grip. Fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. The male practitioner chuckled. I saw you standing here alone for a long time, so I guessed that you don't have a flying sword. That's why I asked. How about it? Do you want to ride on my flying sword? It's only 5 low-grade spirit stones per ride. The price is fair, and I don't cheat anyone, you know? So he was doing business. I don't have money. It's fine. You can use talismans to make up for it as well. He pointed to the talisman in her hands. I'll charge you 1 kilometer per talisman, how about that? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. This is daylight robbery, right? How about this? If you feel that you're making a loss, I'll charge you a respectable price. I'll send you down the mountain with 5 talismans. How about that? He looked as though he was making a huge loss. What the hell was a respectable price? Fellow Taoist, let me tell you this. This flying sword of mine is a 2nd-rank flying sword. It consumes little energy, and it's fast. I'm afraid you won't be satisfied with it. What the hell was with this advertisement? Alright, then I'll send one. Apui, then I'll have to trouble you. Alright. The man cast an art, and the flying sword in his hands instantly grew in size. He first stood on it, and then signaled for Zhu Yao to follow him. Oh right, fellow Taoist is preparing to join Neschazarei sect as well, right? I have yet to ask how I should address you. Yu Yao. So it's fellow Taoist you. He chuckled. I'm the same as you, a follower of Neschazarei sect. In the future, if there's anything like running errands, cleaning, or engraving mystic manuals, remember to call this little brother. I guarantee that I'll be there as soon as you're summoned. Oh right, I'm called Jianshang. Profiteer. Alright. He sure lived up to his name. Of course, if fellow Taoist has anything you wish to see, know, or understand, you can ask me as well. This humble one will definitely tell you everything I know. All you have to do is pay a small amount of spirit stones. In the end, he's still a profiteer, right? Do you have a deep understanding of Neschazarei sect? Of course. Putting aside the small ones, just this entrance test for wandering practitioners is split into 3 steps. The sword technique is merely the first step. There are still 2 more steps after that. What are the other 2 steps? About this. He glanced at the talismans in her hands. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. She took out a talisman and slapped it into his hands, and he instantly smiled like a sunflower. The second step is a test of mystic arts. Most likely, when we ascend the mountain later, there will be a battle, and it will test our ability to adapt to the situation. The third step is the simplest, as well as the most mystical stage. As long as we ascend the mountain and step through that door at the top of the mountain, it will be fine. It is rumored that the door was left behind by a founding ancestor of Neschazerai sect who had already ascended, and the comprehension towards the supreme great Tao was left behind on it. Those who are fated with it, if they are able to sense a strand of the heavenly Tao from it, it is possible for them to gain an epiphany, causing their cultivation to soar. It's extremely beneficial towards deity cultivation. In that case, the final stage is also a benefit. That's right. He nodded. I heard that many disciples from other sects would come here to admire the splendor of this door. However, those who are able to gain an epiphany are few and far between. He paused for a moment, as though he had suddenly recalled something. With a mysterious tone he said, I heard that ancestor had even left behind a riddle on this door. As long as someone is able to guess the answer, they will be able to obtain the cave the ancestor left behind back then, as well as the various treasures within. However, after so many years, there have been people who have gained an epiphany, but no one has ever solved that riddle. There was actually such a mystical door? She was a little curious now. They flew for exactly 3 hours before they arrived at the foot of the mountain. After entering the Great Mountain Barrier Formation, they could no longer fly on their swords, and could only walk. Along the way, Profiteer constantly transmitted various knowledge about Neschazerai sect to her. Of course, he had to pay for these pieces of information. When she regained her senses, all the things in her bosom had already entered his pocket. He was like a know-it-all. If not for the fact that she no longer had anything to trade with, he would most likely be able to tell her what kind of underwear the sect master was wearing today. Seeing that we've cooperated so well, I'll gift you another piece of information, he said mysteriously. Out of the 3 peaks and 6 halls of Neschazerai sect, you can be sent to any of them, but do not ever go to Talisman Spirit Mountain. Why? I heard that the mountain lord of Talisman Spirit Mountain is a little abnormal. He pointed at his head and hinted. What's the name of the Talisman Spirit Mountain lord? I heard that his surname is Chu, and he's called Chu. Chu. Chapter 276. Initially, she had thought that once they reached the second stage, Profiteer would separate from her. After all, she was just an old granny. Though she had already built her foundation, in general, her combat strength was not high. Profiteer, however, suggested to accompany her. The two of them followed the small path up the mountain, and a moment later, they heard cries for help. There's someone in front. They turned around a bend, only to see dozens of living vines suddenly appearing on the path, waving and twisting in the air. At the center of the vines, 2 green-robed practitioners were currently tightly bound within, unable to escape. They're trapped. Profiteer's eyes shone, carrying a faint hint of excitement, as he took a few steps forward. Zhu Yao thought that he wanted to save them, however, he simply stood far away at a place where the vines could not reach, and raised his voice. Fellow Taoists, do you need an explosive talisman? Save us. The two of them had long been tormented by the vines, and the moment they saw someone approaching, they began to cry for help. Profiteer chuckled, and took out the talisman he obtained from her earlier. 1 mid-grade spirit stone for 1. And it even contains explosive effects. Yes. How could the two of them be bothered to bargain, as they nodded their heads frantically? Hurry and release. All right. He circulated his spiritual energy and activated the talisman. In an instant, flames surged into the sky, instantly burning those vines cleanly. The two of them were saved, and after thanking him profusely, they even took the initiative to hand over a mid-grade spirit stone. Profiteer was so happy that his lips were crooked. After the two of them exchanged their names, the two of them walked into a teleportation formation and passed the test, heading to the mountain peak. Profiteer waited for the two of them to disappear, before silently taking out a small red book and wrote their names on it. "What are you doing?" Zhu Yao asked. "Writing it down," he said with a stern look. "In the future, we'll be in the same sect, and we might even be returning customers." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. He even knew about customer marketing. This person would definitely make a fortune. "All right, let's hurry to the mountain peak as well." Profiteer finished writing it down and kept the small book. Just as he was about to follow the two of them into the teleportation formation, Zhu Yao pulled him back. "Wait a minute." Zhu Yao pointed to the formation and said, "That's a single-use teleportation formation. If you head over now, not only will you not be able to head to the mountain peak, you will also activate the green vine formation from earlier." "You know array formations?" Profiteer opened his eyes wide in shock. "A little, I guess," he said excitedly. "Then do you know how to solve this kind of array formation?" Zhu Yao nodded. The green vine formation was not a very powerful formation in the first place, so dispelling it was very simple. "Taoist you." Profiteer suddenly grabbed onto her hand. The way he looked at her was as though he was looking at spirit stones. "Let's be friends? Look, there are so many candidates this time. There must be a lot of people who are in danger and unable to escape. Don't you think we can do something for them?" he said with a sincere expression. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. "No fees." His expression stiffened. Fellow Taoist you're really humorous." She knew it. He must have thought of her as a tool to get rich. "How about this, let's split it 30-70. He gritted his teeth. "You take 30 and I take 70. What do you think?" "I take 70, you take 30. She was clearly the one who had to do the hard work, so why did she have to take a small portion? He gritted his teeth. 40-60 why? Zhu Yao turned around and left. 50-50, 50-50 should be fine, right? Profiteer anxiously shouted. Let's each take a step back. Furthermore, my cultivation is slightly higher than yours, and my senses are stronger than yours. How about it? Zhu Yao's footsteps paused. All right, let's do it. Hence, Profiteer began to search for the people who were in trouble throughout the entire mountain. When they were in danger, he would stretch out a friendly hand to collect fees and save them. He was in charge of negotiating the price, while Zhu Yao was in charge of dispelling the formation. He really did not expect that the business would be so good. In less than 4 hours, they had earned a net profit of 20 pieces of mid-grade spirit stones. Profiteer's client list had already turned 2 pages. Profiteer painfully took out 10 pieces of mid-grade spirit stones and gave them to her. For you, this is your reward. I'll give you a storage pouch out of friendship, and it's free of charge. In the future, after you enter the sect, keep in touch. If there's any more lucrative jobs like this, I'll call you again. Zhu Yao received her first payment. As a former tycoon, her emotions were very complicated. You're not going to continue? It's not early anymore. He pointed to the sky and said, we're only concerned with helping others break formations, and we haven't even met our own tests yet. Though earning money is important, we have to first enter the sect, in order to have a greater future. It's the future of money, right? Zhu Yao nodded. She was too happy earning money, and she had almost forgotten that they were here to participate in the entrance examination. Only then did the two of them begin to head towards the mountain peak. Probably because he was too confident in her formation-breaking techniques, Profiteer did not feel any sense of danger. Along the way, he chatted with her about the number of ways to earn money after they entered the sect. Suddenly, a deep beast roar sounded from the front. Profiteer's figure paused, and his expression instantly paled. My granddaddy, we're too unlucky. What's wrong? Even Zhu Yao could see his nervous expression. It's a demonic beast. I've long heard that in the second test of Neschazerai sect, high-level demonic beasts would occasionally appear. I never thought that we would bump into one. Profiteer lowered his head and opened his storage pouch. He took out the talismans and medicinal pellets he earned from her earlier, and gave half of them to her. Take this. You can keep these to save your life later. I think. She had no use for them. Don't force yourself. If you encounter one later, don't hesitate and hurry and run. It's just the entrance examination. There's no need to risk your life," he instructed with a solemn expression, and then pulled her in the opposite direction. Suddenly, as though he had thought of something, he turned around and said, "All right, I'll pay you later." So he still had to collect money, hey? The roar grew closer, and Profiteer's expression grew even more nervous. He stuck an earth-type defensive talisman on his body, and then he heard a gust of wind blowing from behind. He casually pushed Zhu Yao to the side. Scatter! Split up and run! With a loud boom, a gigantic demonic beast appeared in front of them. His figure was like a lion, and his entire body was covered in white fur. His 4 claws were like an eagle's, and there was even a pair of wings on his back. With a flap of his wings, a strong gust of wind would be stirred up. Before it even landed on the ground, it let out a wild roar at Profiteer, and immediately slammed its claws towards him. A wall of earth instantly rose in front of Profiteer. However, it was unable to block its claws, as it was instantly shattered. It was actually a 5th-rank winged wind beast, which was equivalent to an Azoth core. How was he supposed to fight against it? Profiteer was greatly shocked. Taking the opportunity to retreat several dozen meters, he summoned his flying sword and planned to escape. For some strange reason, he turned to look at his business partner earlier, only to see that she was still standing there blankly. She didn't know why, but she yelled, "Run!" In this half a second of hesitation, the winged wind beast had already reacted and roared at the person who was already flying on his flying sword. Profiteer simply felt a wave of dizziness, and then he fell straight down from the sky. Just as he was about to be smashed to death by the demonic beast's claws, a wall of fire instantly rose in front of him, blocking the winged wind beast. Profiteer raised his head, only to see Zhu Yao was currently holding onto a fire resistance talisman. She was the one who saved him. His heart was feeling complicated, as he reminded, "This is a 5th-rank demonic beast." The winged wind beast noticed Zhu Yao at the side as well. Turning its head to look behind, its eyes instantly widened. Turning its head, it pounced forward a few times, and then, it ran towards Zhu Yao on all fours. "It's over." Profiteer's heart sank. Seeing that demonic beast pouncing towards her, it opened its huge mouth within a sound. He closed his eyes as he could not bear to watch. Yet he heard a sound resounding in his ears. Meow. It was sweet and greasy, and even carried a hint of coquettishness. Profiteer carefully opened his eyes, only to see the most shocking scene in his cultivation life. The 5th-rank winged wind beast, which was still overbearing and filled with malice earlier, was currently lying in front of his temporary business partner, coquettishly rolling on the ground, its white belly flipping in joy. It rolled to the point that a large patch of grass and trees at the side fell. As for that elderly man called Yu Yao, he was currently standing at the side with a paralyzed expression, as he expressionlessly watched that demonic beast rolling on the ground. Amen, she was already used to it. A tender voice resounded in her ears one after another. "Smoothing my fur. Smoothing my fur. Smoothing my fur. I want to smoothing my fur." The more it spoke, the happier it became as it rolled on the ground. It circled around her in a 360-degree Thomas full spin, rolling here and there, rolling back and forth. The grass and trees that were being crushed were about to form a crop circle. The slogan it shouted was incredibly loud, as though it was beating a rhythm. "Smoothing my fur, smoothing my fur. Smoothing my fur, smoothing my fur." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She wondered if her plant avatar would automatically activate the interspecies translation function, as she was still able to understand the demonic beast's words. The winged wind beast rolled on the ground for a long while. Seeing that she was completely ignoring it, its glass heart shattered into pieces. Its eyes closed, and its eyes began to blur with tears. Even its voice had sunk by a few degrees. "Well, you don't like my fur. I'm so sad. I don't want my fur anymore. I'm going to burn it." As it said that, it really stood up, as though it was walking towards Profiteer's wall of fire. "Come back." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Sighing, she raised her hand and stroked its gigantic beast head. The winged wind beast was instantly satisfied. With narrowed eyes, it rubbed against her palm, and sweetly called out. Jianshang's entire being felt unwell. He had never seen a demonic beast with such a lack of dignity. Even if it was tamed as a spiritual beast, he had never seen one so obedient towards its owner. He was a little dumbfounded. Casting an art to extinguish the wall of fire, he walked towards Zhu Yao. Taoist Yu. Senior Yu, you know the art of taming beasts. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. No, she had simply forgotten to turn off the world-favorable impression ability in her previous life. I know a thing or two. Just knowing a thing or two, and she was able to tame a 5th-ranked demonic beast. Then, if she were to master it, then that would be incredible. Jianshang silently decided that he definitely had to maintain a good working relationship with her. It is rumored that demonic beasts are very hard to tame. When Senior is free, can you help me tame a spiritual beast? Of course, I will pay for it. We'll see. She really did not know about this. Jianshang looked at the obedient winged wind beast in front of him with an envious look. The fear he had earlier was completely swept away, and he could not help but want to reach out and stroke it as well. However, the winged wind beast suddenly turned its head around and roared at him. While it was at it, it smeared his face with its saliva. If you dare touch it, I'll eat you. It fiercely glared at him, and then it turned to look at Zhu Yao. Its style instantly changed. Meow, stroke it again, stroke its fur. Jianshang. Chapter 277. Cuckoo. Beastie. Zhu Yao's hands were a little sore from touching it, as she asked seriously. We're going up the mountain, do you know the way? Earlier, after being pulled by Profiteer, they had already lost their direction. I know, Meow. The winged wind beast turned around and stood in front of her, pushing Profiteer away with its butt. It then slowly knelt down and signaled for her to sit on its back. Beastie will bring you there, Meow. Thank you. Looking at the sky, it was indeed too late to walk up now. Zhu Yao climbed onto its back, just as she was about to pull Profiteer up. However, the winged wind beast kicked him away with its claw, and growled threateningly at him. Zhu Yao had no choice but to do some mental work for this beastie. Only then did the winged wind beast reluctantly flap its wings, using its claw to grab Profiteer and fly towards the mountain peak. Probably because they came too late, when they reached the mountain peak, there were only the two of them. Fortunately, the teleportation formation was not closed yet. Zhu Yao waved goodbye to the winged wind beast, before walking into the teleportation formation with Profiteer. They were teleported to the main hall's floating mountain. The winged wind beast sadly stood where it was. It raised its head to look at the floating mountain above its head, and began to ponder. As a trial beast, it seemed to be occasionally absent, which was understandable. Zhu Yao was immediately teleported onto a platform. Everyone who succeeded in clearing the trial was gathered here, no matter if they were wandering practitioners or mortal children. With a single glance, there were actually more than 100 people. It seemed like Nest Chazerei sect's recruitment range was rather wide. When they arrived, the disciples who were supposed to receive them had coincidentally arrived as well. As expected, they were still the 2 foundation disciples at the foot of the mountain earlier. However, compared to Lung Mo from before, they were much more passionate now. Congratulations, everyone. From today onwards, you are disciples of our Nest Chazerei sect. As long as you pass through the righteous heart door in front, you will be considered to have officially entered our sect. He exchanged glances with the disciple next to him. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of white jade tablets flew towards everyone. These are barrier-breaking stones. There are a few elementary mental arts inside. When you enter the final trial, the righteous heart door, you will enter an illusion. The illusion is born from your heart, and you cannot control it. If you can see through it, you will gain enlightenment. You can allow this mental art to increase your cultivation, but if you do not have the ability, you cannot force it. This barrier-breaking stone can create illusions. Everyone held the jade token tightly in their hands. Perhaps the rogue cultivators had all heard about the righteous heart gate, and their faces were filled with excitement. On the other hand, the child who had never cultivated before had a blank look on his face. Junior brothers and sisters, let's enter the last stage. The man made a hand seal, and the dense fog behind him began to disperse. A simple and unadorned arched stone door appeared in front of them. Everyone walked towards the stone door, and everything around them suddenly became somewhat blurry. Zhu Yao raised her head, wanting to see the few words on the arched door clearly. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not see them clearly. Just as he was about to ask the profiteer next to him, he heard a thud and fell straight down. Profiteer. She was shocked, and an even stranger scene appeared. The crowd that had been crowded just a moment ago suddenly fell to the ground like a bowling ball that had been pushed over. Finally, she was the only one left. What was going on? Zhu Yao hurriedly checked the profiteer's pulse, only to realize that there was nothing wrong with him. He was just asleep? Could it be the effect of this door? She seriously looked at the door in front of her, only to see the dense fog that had just risen begin to disperse. A gigantic figure faintly appeared behind the door, and it became clearer, and finally, meow, beastie. Wasn't that the winged wind beast earlier? When did it follow them? What's going on? A slightly furious voice sounded from behind the door. Why is the winged wind beast guarding the mountain here? Sectmaster, this disciple doesn't know either. Nonsense. Hurry and bring it down. Suddenly, 5 pillars of light appeared around the winged wind beast's body, trapping it tightly. The winged wind beast began to struggle violently. Its furious roar resounded through the clouds. Roar, roar. Beastie, don't go. Beastie wants to be pacified. Roar. Unfortunately, it wasn't of much use. The range of the pillar of light grew smaller and smaller. In the end, it turned into a ray of white light and flew into a person's spiritual beast pouch. Only then did Zhu Yao clearly see that there was a row of people seated behind the door. Looking at their auras, they should be the higher-ups of Nest Chazerei sect. Chu Chu was seated right there, and he was currently looking at her with a shocked expression. There's actually someone who gave up so quickly, and came out from the illusion. The middle-aged man sitting at the very center frowned, and sighed. How the young old these days. He sized Zhu Yao up for a moment, and changed his words at the last moment. Zhu Yao. Forget it. He waved his hand and said. Since she's already here, she can be considered as a disciple of our sect. Stand at the side. Chu Chu blinked at her, stood up and said. Senior Martial Brother Sect Master, I wish to take her in. Nonsense. She really wasn't good at guessing puzzles, so she would just have to deal with it. She turned to look at the door, and saw that there were really words written on the door frame. The first line wrote, Chung Qingdiao. The second line wrote, Crouching Dragon's Pool, filled with gold. The third line wrote, What you seek bitterly is hollow. The fourth line wrote, Jade clears side Qi Shang. The fifth line wrote, If you continue to delay, you will not meet. The final line wrote, Author, Daoist Wang Shang stay. Also it was classical Chinese. As a science student who had yet to learn Chinese well, she hated classical Chinese the most, you know? She was already used to various mathematical formulas, and was used to thinking logically. This sort of literary stuff was really… wait a minute. If she were to talk about logic, why did the first word before every line of punctuation look so familiar? If they were to be connected, she could not help but read it out. Ching Qingdiao, the hell you bitch, goodbye. The hell, wasn't she scolding him? The moment her voice fell, the entire stone door suddenly emitted out a dazzling white light. In an instant, it lit up the already dusky sky, and the words on the door frame gradually faded. Only the first and fourth lines were left. In the end, all of them disappeared. The riddle has been solved. The sect master and his little companions were dumbfounded. They stood up in unison, and looked at Zhu Yao in disbelief. This was an accident. Please forgive a math dog's OCD. Sect master, hurry and look at the lake at the front mountain. Someone shouted out. Everyone turned their heads to look at the large lake beside Nest Chazerei sect. As though the lake water was boiling, it began to surge wildly. Immediately after, the earth shook, and even the entire sect began to shake. Zhu Yao grabbed onto the pillar at the side to prevent herself from falling. However, the lake water began to boil even more violently, and it began to split into two. Something seemed to be rising from the center of the lake. Before she could see its shape, she could see a dazzling golden light, and the light was growing brighter. Its skybound peak. Someone excitedly said. The ascended ancestor's skybound peak has appeared. Zhu Yao rubbed her eyes with great difficulty, and only then did she see a golden palace rising from the lake water. In the beginning, it was merely a corner, but as it rose higher and higher, she could clearly see that it was actually a gigantic floating mountain. The size of this place was almost as big as the main mountain she was at. And on top of the floating mountain, a palace that occupied the entire mountain peak, and it would be a little underwhelming to describe it with the word jewelry, appeared before everyone's eyes. The owner of this mountain must be very rich. Zhu Yao silently thought. That mountain rose higher and higher, and had even surpassed the tallest main mountain. It was thousands of meters taller, and only then did it stop in the air. The entire palace was like a lighthouse, wildly increasing its presence in the dusky night sky. Chapter 278. Sect Leader. Everyone's surprised and delighted gazes were focused on the person in charge of the sect. Chu Jiang frowned and waved his hand. Let's go take a look first. With a wave of his hand, he summoned his flying sword. Suddenly, he recalled something and turned to look at Zhu Yao. That elderly man, come with us. The crowd once again gathered their gazes onto Zhu Yao. Elderly Zhu Yao. That with a wave of the sect master's hand, Zhu Yao flew towards him and stopped on his flying sword. Sect master. Then these new disciples who have yet to wake up. Someone asked. Who cares about the disciples now? He waved his sleeves and said. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Thus, he brought the group of upper echelons towards the peak of Nouveau Riche he had just unlocked. Skybound Peak. In an instant, the dozen or so upper echelons and the elderly man had already arrived in front of the jewel-adorned palace on Skybound Peak. Strangely, though this mountain had risen from the water, not a single trace of water could be seen on the mountain. It was clean and refreshing, however, the spiritual energy here was especially abundant. The huge doors of the palace were tightly shut, and a golden formation was currently circulating on the door. Countless complicated runes were flowing within it, and even though they were quite a distance away, they could still feel the supreme pressure coming from the formation. It made them feel a little stuffy and short of breath. Senior Marshal Brother, look at this. The crowd looked at the formation a little helplessly. Chu Jiang frowned, and turned to look at his unreliable Junior Marshal Brother Chu Chu. Junior Marshal Brother Chu, you have always been proficient in formations and runes. Can you tell what kind of formation this is? Chu Chu sized up the formation on the door, and after studying it for a long while he said, 5 words Chaos Formation. This formation is an ancient formation. The method to enter it can be said to be simple, but it can also be said to be very difficult. What do you mean? Chu Jiang frowned. To be more precise, it requires a correct password. Chu Chu continued. Only a person recognized by this formation can enter by saying the correct password. Furthermore, this formation cannot be dispelled. If someone were to barge in, their divine sense would definitely be injured by the formation if their cultivation level is lower than the person who laid the formation. If their cultivation level is higher than the person who laid the formation will immediately activate. The entire Skybound Peak will be destroyed. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Did they need a password to enter? This palace had been buried for hundreds of thousands of years. Who would know? If there really was. Everyone was startled. Suddenly recalling something, they looked towards Zhu Yao one after another. Why are you looking at me? I don't know either. The sect master took a step forward, and his attitude instantly became much more respectful. He cupped his fists towards Zhu Yao. Yet he simply could not recall her name, and was momentarily stumped. Zhu Yao. She's called Zhu Yao. Chu Chu jumped out with a proud look, and excitedly said. This is my sister-in-law. Sister-in-law my ass. The riddle of Skybound Peak was solved by her. She must know the password to open the door. Everyone's eyes lit up. Chu Chu winked at her and said confidently, Isn't that right, sister-in-law? Zhu Yao wanted to give him a kick. Your sister. What the hell does she know? Who the hell would know what the password was? Fellow Taoist Jew. The sect master finally found a suitable form of address. There's no harm in giving it a try. Could she reject it? She glanced at the pairs of ardent and sparkling eyes around her. If she rejected it, she would be beaten to death, right? Zhu Yao had no choice but to bite the bullet and step forward. She glanced at the formation. The password, could it be Open Sesame? No reaction. All right, as expected. She was too naive. In this world, the only one called Sesame was that beastie. Taking a deep breath, she consecutively tried a few more. Alibaba. Dat ta ba dat ma yun, dat ma huareng? I tried my best. Everyone's excited expressions instantly turned cold. Chu Jiang pondered for a moment, and then suggested, Fellow Taoist Jew, why don't you use the mystic art you used to solve the riddle earlier? Earlier, that Zhu Yao gave a face. Aren't you forcing me to swear? You're the headmaster of Nest Chazerei Academy. Is it really good to teach students like this? Left with no choice, she could only take a deep breath, and angrily said, Ching Ching Diao, the hell you bitch, goodbye. She shouted 3 times in succession. There was still no reaction from the formation on the door. Everyone's faces were already filled with despair. Zhu Yao suddenly recalled that when this tycoon mountain rose earlier, the words on True Heart door had disappeared. Could the password be a simplified version? The last 2 words that disappeared were, Ching Ching Diao bitch? The moment her words fell, the formation instantly shot out a ray of golden light, directly shining on her arm. Zhu Yao simply felt her hand heating up. She rolled up her sleeves to take a look. An umbrella-shaped pattern suddenly appeared on her arm's neck, and it was even faintly flashing with a golden light. Before she could even retort, that jeweled door suddenly opened with a loud bang. The hell? That sentence earlier was really a password. Just what kind of grudge did the owner of this palace have with that Ching Ching Diao? That door was not completely opened. It had merely opened up a small crack that allowed a person to pass through. In the next moment, that formation once again emitted out a golden light. Zhu Yao simply felt her body becoming light, and with a flash of white light, she disappeared from where she stood. The door closed with a loud bang as well. Only the crowd was left in a daze. When Zhu Yao regained her senses, she was already standing at the center of a great hall. This great hall was extremely luxurious. Even the floor was paved with white spiritual stones. The surrounding stone pillars were also materials for refining artifacts. And even the light muslin hanging in the hall was menstrual pads. No, wait, it was the material her master once gave her to make menstrual pads. Zhu Yao instantly felt that she was unable to look straight at the muslin. She carefully walked towards the center. Just as she stood at the center of the great hall, a translucent figure suddenly appeared in midair. It was a handsome man with a stern expression. Zhu Yao guessed that this person should be the owner of this mountain. However, that was merely an image, and did not have a physical body. It should have been left behind by the man before he ascended. As expected, in the next moment, a deep and solemn male voice resounded in the hall. I am Taoist Wang Shang. After searching for the Tao for several tens of thousands of years, I finally managed to peek into the heavenly Tao and cultivate to an unparalleled perfection. I have specially left this hall in this world, to those who are fated to obtain it, to benefit the descendants of Su Yao. This hall contains all the techniques I have learned in my life, 3,000 mystic arts, pellets. What followed was a large pile of introductions to the topography of Skybound Peak, and the usage of various items. Zhu Yao was a little drowsy from listening to him. Summarizing the gist of it, this person called Taoist Wang Shang was a wealthy nouveau riche when he was alive, and he had collected various rare treasures in the world. After that he was about to ascend, and these things could no longer be of use to him, so he placed them all here. However, he was afraid that someone else would snatch it from him, so he sealed it and waited for a fated person to be chosen before passing it on. He hoped that the people who came would make good use of them. Hearing up to this point, Zhu Yao felt that he was very normal, because in most scenarios powerful practitioners would always do something like this. Just when he thought that it was just the usual plot of these cultivation novels, and that there was nothing new, the man in the image suddenly changed his tone. His tone became angry and agitated. Anyone who enters this hall must remember one thing. Do not befriend people from the Wind Riding sect. If you see people from this sect, you must kill them. To think that I, Wang Shang, have cultivated for tens of thousands of years and traversed the cultivation world unhindered. I was only deceived by Qingqingdiao, the wind resistance sect master. This person is treacherous and cunning, he's worse than pigs and dogs. Isn't Qingqingdiao the person on the password? There's hope. Zhu Yao's expression shook, and her gossip mode was instantly activated. Back then, when I got to know her during the Azoth core stage, when I saw that she had a weak personality, I instantly felt pity for her. I protected her for thousands of years, and was wholeheartedly devoted to her. I had never once been disloyal. No matter if she encountered danger in a secret realm, had difficulties in her cultivation, or was troubled by a heretic practitioner, I would go through fire and water to protect her. I was afraid that she would suffer even the slightest bit of bullying or grievance. So it was actually a love story. It seemed like this girl Qingqingdiao had betrayed him in the end. For her, I was willing to reject my childhood sweetheart junior martial sister, and be despised by my master, in order to be together with her. I wandered outside for exactly 200 years, unable to return to the sect, yet I never had a single word of complaint. And in order to be together with her openly, a heart demon had nearly been born. It seemed like he was still an infatuated type. After narrowly escaping death, I successfully formed my nascent soul. Only then did I receive my master's forgiveness and return to the sect. In order to gain her favor, I even gathered various mystic artifacts and pellets from all over the place, hoping that she would smile at me. For thousands of years, I guarded her without leaving her side. Because of a single sentence from her, I never took in a single disciple, and did not even have a successor. The man's voice grew even sharper. And because she didn't like others to know about our relationship, she had always hidden it from the world. She worked hard to cultivate into a demigod. With the identity of a demigod sovereign, I proposed to her with the utmost sincerity. Zhu Yao's heart sank, as she faintly guessed the ending. This guy must have been rejected, right? And then his love turned into hatred or something. As expected, Taoist Wang Shang's voice grew even louder, to the point of roaring. This old man had thought that the reason why she didn't want others to know was because she was afraid of implicating me. Who would have thought that this old man would happily propose to her? He even took off his pants, and he actually told me that he's a man. Mama's egg, he's actually a man. The hell, can you even understand? The person this old man has been longing for thousands of years is actually a goddamn man. Can any of you understand this old man's heartbreak? Where's the most basic trust between people? This old man feels like I've been made a fool of by the entire world. Qingqingdiao, you motherfucking bitch. This old man will never forgive you for my entire life. Even if you turn into ashes, I will blow you to pieces. Bitch, bastard. Zhu Yao listened to the furious curses with a dumbfounded expression. She felt as though she was in Sparta. From the looks of it, it was completely understandable for this bastard to set down those curses that sounded like vulgarities. Zhu Yao listened to the image's curses for exactly 2 hours, and not a single word was repeated. Even Zhu Yao wanted to exclaim at how good his language skills were. It was no wonder even the password to enter the door was so fresh and refined. After the image finally had his fill of cursing, that otherworldly aura earlier had already completely disappeared. What was left was an image of a boorish man, panting heavily with his hands on his hips. Without any image to speak of, he waved his hand in the air and said, "Wait a moment, let me catch my breath." Chapter 279. Wang Shang's tone was no longer as scholarly as before, as he said in a much more amiable tone. In any case, it's just something like that. Now that that bastard has been destroyed by me as well, I still can't take this lying down. That's why I built this before I ascended, just to make that bitch go down in history. Although I can't see it, just thinking about it makes me feel good. In any case, to be able to understand my incantation and open this door, he definitely isn't a simple person. At the very least, he should be the same kind of person as the person who taught me those special words back then. So be it then, you can do whatever you want with this palace. After saying that, the image flashed and disappeared. Zhu Yao's heart trembled for a moment because of his final words. Ever since she saw the riddle on the true heart door, she felt that something was amiss. Now she finally recalled it. Those curses were too modern. Why would this person who had ascended for hundreds of thousands of years know about them? And from the meaning of the image, those words were taught to him by someone else, and others definitely wouldn't be able to understand them. Then who was the person who taught him? Could it be that there was someone like her who had transmigrated to this world? Zhu Yao exited the great hall and looked around. Only then did she realize that this tycoon's palace was extraordinarily huge. It could even be said to be the size of a sect. The various mystic arts inside were extremely complete, and there were even specialized pill rooms, artifact rooms, and talisman rooms. Various items that could cause practitioners to go crazy were piled up inside. As someone who had even lived in the divine realm, Zhu Yao did not have much interest. I've seen good stuff before, so I don't fancy these at all. She casually picked up a bottle of 7th rank pellets and an 8th rank mystic artifact. She saw that a special formation was engraved on both the mystic artifact and the bottle of pellets. When she recognized what that formation was, the corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, and a dark expression surfaced on her face. She suddenly understood what that Taoist Wangshang meant when he said he wanted Cheng Qingdiao to go down in history. This Taoist Wangshang sure had a lot of ideas. She really wanted to give him 32 likes. Zhu Yao sighed, shook her head, and then turned to walk out of the hall. It was time to head out and report to the crickets. The moment she opened the door, the dozen or so high-ranking officials who had been waiting outside all bowed down to her. This disciple greets Senior Martial Ant. What's going on? Zhu Yao's footsteps stopped, and she was given a fright. He glanced at the only person he knew, Chu Chu. Explain, friend. Chu Chu turned his face to the side, looking unhappy. Martial uncle. Headmaster Chu Jiang took a step forward and explained. When old ancestor Wangshang ascended, he left behind instructions that anyone who could enter this hall would be his successor. All the items in the hall belonged to him. Your ancestor Wangshang's disciple now, so it's only right for us to call you martial uncle. Could he refuse? She had her master to tell her. Sect master is too polite. Zhu Yao chuckled. She, a foundation practitioner, was being called senior martial ant by a group of nascent soul practitioners? Wasn't this just courting death? This was an ancient hill sect after all, and her powerful master wasn't by her side either. I'm just a mere foundation practitioner. How can I hold such a high position? Martial Uncle Zhu, these are the teachings of our ancestors. We will never dare to forget them. His face was resolute. Sect master, it's truly a coincidence that I entered this hall. I don't dare to covet the items inside, much less become your martial uncle. This hall belongs to Neschazarei sect in the first place, so I'll return it to sect master now. As she said that, she even returned the mystic artifact and pellet that she casually took out earlier to him. Chu Jiang was startled, as though he did not dare to believe that she would so easily hand over such a huge treasure trove, and she even had the intention to leave. In his heart, he was both worried and happy. Martial Uncle Zhu, wait a moment. Chu Jiang walked over, sighed, and said with a suppressed voice. Martial Uncle, I'll tell you the truth. Other than you, no one else can enter. That password only recognizes the first person who speaks it. So the reason they called her senior martial uncle was because they wanted her to be a porter. Then give me a few storage pouches. I'll go in and bring out the items inside for you. That should be fine, right? Chu Jiang's eyes shone for a moment, and then immediately darkened again. You can't. If Neschazarei sect were to obtain so many treasures in a short period of time, it will definitely become the target of everyone. The inside of this hall is the safest place. I'm actually going to show you treasures, right? Martial uncle, please think of the bigger picture and protect my Neschazarei sect. I'm just a foundation practitioner. She was just a newcomer. Was it really alright to push the responsibility onto her? And she still had to look for bugs. She didn't have the time to look at treasures here. Martial uncle, please be at ease. As long as you agree to stay, I, Neschazarei sect, will definitely use the power of the entire sect to protect Martial Uncle's safety. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. The matter of her solving the riddle today and entering Skybound Peak would most likely spread throughout the entire cultivation world very soon. Though there were countless treasures in this hall, it was not enough to cover up her low cultivation level. Indeed, she had to find a backer. Chu Jiang's suggestion was just right. She hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she still nodded. Hence, after joining Ancient Hill Sect, she became their sect master's senior martial uncle. The difference was her senior martial uncle in the past was a legitimate one, while her current senior martial uncle was merely a doorkeeper uncle. Chu Jiang joyfully bowed towards her, and then he took a look at the pellet she had stuffed into his hands earlier. Senior martial uncle, I wonder how do I dispel the formation on this bottle? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She pointed to the formation on the door of the Great Hall, and said, "It's the same formation as the one above. Just shout out once, and the password I shouted out when I entered the hall earlier will be dispelled." Chu Jiang was startled. After pondering for a moment, he picked up the bottle, and with an incomparably stern and serious expression he loudly said, "Ching ching diao bitch." Coo coo coo. Zhu Yao could not help but choke on her saliva. The formation on the bottle was dispelled. Chu Jiang poured out the pellet to take a look, and his eyes suddenly widened. This is Nascent Soul Pellet. And it was a total of 6 pellets. These were pellets used to raise one's Azoth core to Nascent Soul. With these, it meant that the sect would have 6 more Nascent Soul practitioners. Chu Jiang was so excited that his hands began to tremble. He picked up the mystic artifact in his other hand, and it was actually a 7th-rank mystic artifact. However, it was still sealed by a formation. He once again looked toward Zhu Yao. Senior martial uncle? Zhu Yao's expression darkened. Dispel the password. It's the same as earlier. Hence, Chu Jiang once again loudly shouted out, "Cheng Qing Diao bitch." The mystic artifact's formation was dispelled once again. That's right. The method that Wang Shang thought of to make Cheng Qing Diao go down in infamy for 10,000 years was to engrave the exact same formation on every single item he left behind. If he wanted to use them, he had to first scold Cheng Qing Diao. Forget about the pellets and talismans. After all, they were single-use consumables, so a single scolding would be enough. Mystic artifacts and cultivation arts, on the other hand, were miserable. Every single time he used a mystic artifact, or activated a cultivation art, he would have to scold a bitch. Especially if someone were to choose these mystic artifacts as their life artifact, wouldn't he have to help him scold them for the rest of his life? This Taoist Wang Shang was definitely an incredible person. There was no need to explain himself. Thinking about it, not long later, a popular phrase would rise in the entire cultivation world. Cheng Qing Diao bitch. No matter if it was fighting, consuming pellets to raise his cultivation, or meditating, everyone would scold him for no reason. It was no wonder Wang Shang would say that. Whenever he imagined this scene, he would feel great. This feeling of having the entire world helping him scold others, it was indeed great. Senior martial ant, I wonder what this bitch means? Chu Jiang's face was filled with curiosity. This disciple has been in the cultivation world for so many years, but I have never heard of such a pond. What if she couldn't answer such a deep question? Ha, sect master. Junior martial nephew, actually this concept is too profound, and I don't know the full meaning either. However, after solving the riddle of True Heart Gate, there's only this mystic art. It seems like if I want to know the answer, I can only ask the ascended Taoist Wang Shang. Chu Jiang nodded, and said with a yearning look, Old ancestors' comprehension towards the heavenly Tao is truly unfathomable. Zhu Yao. It's not the slightest bit deep, alright? If I tell you that he's only scolding people, you will collapse, right? Chu Jiang was about to sigh a few more times, when he received a voice transmission from a disciple of the main mountain, saying that all the new disciples who entered True Heart Gate had woken up, and he was invited to host the disciple acceptance ceremony. Only then did he recall those new disciples who had collapsed on the ground. While he was at it, he dragged Zhu Yao along to join in the fun, and test her aptitude as well. Chu Jiang had 120% confidence in Zhu Yao. After all, a person who could solve the riddle of True Heart Gate, and was even acknowledged by Skybound Peak, her aptitude definitely wouldn't be too bad. Even if she was a little old, he firmly believed that it was because she had started cultivating late. With his Nest Chazarei sex power, it wasn't impossible for her to form her Azoth core before her lifespan ends. When the time comes to reconstruct her physical body, things like age wouldn't be a problem at all. He was filled with confidence towards Senior Marshal Aunt Zhu. However, the moment he tested her spirit veins, he was instantly dumbfounded. 5 elements trash spirit veins. No, this isn't real. He wanted to climb up to the heavens and chat about life with that old ancestor. Crash. Poor aptitude meant low cultivation, short lifespan, and no one could enter Skybound Peak, and no one could ever obtain the treasures inside. After understanding this cruel fact, Chu Jiang felt that his entire person wasn't good. Sect Master, the new disciples are already waiting outside. A disciple came in and bowed before reminding, "Do you want to let the wandering disciples in first?" Chu Jiang glanced at Zhu Yao at the side, and his heart felt stifled. With a wave of his hand he said, "Let the mortal disciples in first." Right now, he did not wish to see wandering practitioners. Zhu Yao rubbed her nose. Her poor spirit veins wasn't her fault. It was all realm spirits doing. If there's nothing else, I'll be heading down first. At a time like this, it was best if she did not strike a blow to his confidence. Senior Marshal Aunt Chu Jiang pulled onto Zhu Yao and said with a tearless voice, "From today onwards, I beg of you to go into closed-door cultivation, all right?" For the sake of Nest Chazarei sect, she had to study hard and improve every day. "All right, Headmaster." Junior Marshal Brother Chu immediately bring Senior Marshal Aunt to the art depository. No matter what level of arts it is, there's no need to restrict them. Chu Chu nodded and stood up as well. Chapter 280. She walked in a hurry and did not pay attention to where she was going. Just as she was about to leave the Great Hall, she coincidentally bumped into a few little turnips. They should be the new disciples recruited this time, and they were about 10 years old. Walking in front were 3 children. Most probably, it was their first time entering such a mystical place, as the 3 of them had different expressions. The first child had an excited expression, the second child had an excited expression, and the third child had an Zhu Yao's feet paused, and she had almost fallen out of the hall. "Sister-in-law." Chu Chu grabbed onto her hand, and only then did he prevent her face from hitting the ground. "Who's your sister-in-law?" "Wait." Zhu Yao turned to look at the group of children who had already walked to the center of the hall, and her heart was in turmoil. A bug had appeared without warning once again, and there was no warning at all. "Cricket, who's that child over there?" She pointed to the little boy on the right. "Isn't he a new disciple?" Chu Chu gave her a "how would I know" look. However, to be able to stand in the front row, he must be someone who broke through the illusion in front of Righteous Heart Gate. It's a pity that they have never cultivated before. Although they have gained enlightenment, they are unable to raise their cultivation and can only strengthen their hearts. The people standing in the front row have all gained enlightenment? Amen. Gaining enlightenment upon entering the sect, this was clearly the standard of a cheat. She suddenly thought of Xiao Yi. As expected, all bugs would walk on the path of a fortuitous encounter. This child couldn't be the same as Xiao Yi, right? She could not help but turn her head and look into the hall. The spirit veins test had already begun. The first row of children who had gained enlightenment, one had tri-spirit veins, and the other had duo-spirit veins. They were all considered to have good aptitudes, and even Chu Zhang's expression had softened quite a bit. When it was that bug child's turn, he placed his hand on the crystal ball. In an instant, 1 type, 2 types, 3 types, 5 types of colors appeared in the ball. Chu Zhang's soaring mood, in an instant, once again fell to the bottom of the valley. Penta-spirit veins. Zhu Yao was dumbfounded. This setting wasn't right. What happened to the promised bugged male protagonist exploding the heavens? Why did he have penta-spirit veins? Could it be that he had changed to the bitter path this time? Filled with doubts, she was pulled back to Skybound Peak by Chu Chu. Before she could even think clearly about the difference in this bug, she had already sunk into her busy studies. The nation's good principal, Comrade Chu Jiang, personally supervised the teaching. Every day, he would come to watch over her and cultivate, determined to raise her into a virtuous, intelligent, and physically beautiful Apui. He was an expert in all 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The way he looked at her every day was as passionate as fire. She would occasionally yawn, and Chu Jiang would grieve for half a day. Every time he would have to guide her patiently. He said earnestly, "Martial uncle, there isn't much time left." She thought she had lost half of her body. It was as if he had already been buried. Could the elderly have a normal life in their later years? Whenever they encountered the slightest problem in their cultivation, Chu Jiang would, as a matter of utmost importance to the sect, gather all the high-level leaders of the nascent soul stage and above. They would hold a special meeting to discuss and research in depth. In the end, they would come up with the perfect solution. They were just afraid that she would take the wrong path. This was the degree of importance they attached. It even alarmed the central government, the soul formation supremacies. The 2 honorary professors of Nest Chazerei sect were demigod sovereigns, who were said to be elusive. They even took turns to talk to her. That's not right. They imparted her with various cultivation experiences. They even specially bound the various difficult questions she might encounter into books. No, they were made into jade tablets, so that she could check on them at any time. This sort of atmosphere where the entire nation wished for you to live long. It really scared this grandma to death. "Grandma, sect master is doing this for your own good," Little Tyrant said with a stern look. Zhu Yao stroked his little head that was pretending to be mature. "What do you know? Science education is about being relaxed. It's not right to blindly spoil things through excessive enthusiasm." She strongly protested, requesting for a vacation. "Grandma." Little Tyrant glanced at her face. "You're already very old. There's no need for you to grow any longer." She got stabbed. Spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm doesn't mean that, hey. She pulled his chubby little cheeks and pulled them to the sides. "What did you say?" He actually dared to look down on her for being old. "Grandma. It hurts, it hurts." He rubbed his reddened little cheeks, and said with a wronged look, "Little Bai is speaking the truth. Little Bai can't even get master to teach me." Zhu Yao was startled. She carried him up and placed him on her lap. "What do you mean you can't? Isn't Chu Jiang your master as well?" "No, he's the sect master's master. He's different from my master." He shook his head. What did he mean? Zhu Yao only found out after asking. Apparently, Little Bai was a second-generation practitioner. His parents could be considered to be in the upper echelons of the sect, with Azoth stage cultivation. However, both of them died when he was still young. He possessed the metal and fire duo spirit veins, so he was taken in as the personal succeeding disciple of another nascent soul executive in the sect. However, not long after he entered the sect, his master went into a life and death isolation, and he had yet to come out. In order to not waste a genius with dual spirit veins, Principal Chu Jiang brought him along to teach him, which was why Little Bai addressed him as sect master. However, he was after all, a disciple under someone else's supervision. Hence, in terms of cultivation, he was naturally not as strict as his own master. Compared to her strict teaching, Little Bai could be considered as an existence that was left to fend for himself. "It's fine, you can learn together with Grandma in the future." Zhu Yao made a prompt decision, and copied all of the contents that Chu Jiang had taught her, for Little Bai to read. She couldn't possibly be the only one learning. Little Bai was still very happy in the beginning, but as she gave him more and more things, his little face instantly became conflicted. There were too many things, and as a child who was not even 10 years old, it was really a little hard for him to digest. She could only add in some of her own cultivation experiences, especially the details like Foundation and Azoth stage, which he had to pay attention to. "Grandma, can I really become very strong after learning all of these?" "Of course, I'll be as strong as Grandma. You have to believe me, young man." His eyes shone. Suddenly he thought of something, and said with a conflicted expression, "But doesn't Foundation only require eating a Foundation pellet?" Zhu Yao frowned. As a good successor of Jade Forest Mountain, she instinctively hated pellets. "Little Tyrant, it's best not to eat things like pellets." "Why?" "Because..." Zhu Yao began to scare little kids. Think about it, what are pellets refined using? He lowered his little head and pondered before replying. Spiritual herbs. That's right, spiritual herbs. Then think about it again. What's Grandma's original form? Dandelions. Look, dandelions are grass as well. If pellets are refined using spiritual herbs, then wouldn't it require a lot of grass corpses, just like Grandma? Before she could even finish, little Tyrant's expression had already turned deathly pale. He looked at her fearfully, and as though he had recalled something, he covered his mouth, looking as though he was about to puke. Then he ran far away. She heard from Chu Jiang that little Tyrant puked for 2 whole hours after he returned, and he was still having nightmares even now. Zhu Yao felt a sense of guilt, as though she had harmed the flowers of her motherland. From then on, little Bai distanced himself from all pellets. The effects were still very obvious. After Principal Chu Jiang gave her 3 months of theoretical foundation lessons, he forced her into closed-door training to digest it. He forbade everyone from disturbing her at Skyban Peak, including Little Tyrant and Cricket. Zhu Yao basically did not have the chance to inquire about that bug, and adding that she had yet to receive the scenario, she did not dare to act on her own. She heard that he was sent to the outer sect. After estimating for a moment, that child was at most 10 years old. Even if he wanted to do evil things like destroying the world, he had to wait until he grew up. She instructed Chu Chu to pay attention to that unknown bug child and help him out when he was in trouble. She did her best to prevent him from becoming like Xiao Yi, with his worldview skewed. After doing all these, she officially began to cultivate diligently. Although she did not really approve of Chu Zhang's impatient behavior of wanting her to raise her cultivation level, with her current body, she indeed needed to raise it. Although it was much better than a regular elderly, at least she did not have to rest after every 5 steps. However, compared to other practitioners, she was much weaker, and her bones were brittle. This palace in Skyban Peak was a good place for closed-door training. Probably because the previous owner had scattered spirit stones all over the ground. The spiritual energy inside was more than 10 times denser than other places. She even skipped the step of setting up a spiritual energy gathering formation, and immediately found a place with the most balanced spiritual energy of the 5 elements, and began to meditate. She did not form her Azoth core, but instead, she had a dream, and it was none other than that nonsensical plot foretelling dream. Compared to the plot in the past, what she saw this time was an inspirational drama. The protagonist's name was Yi Qing-song. His circumstances were similar to the bug Xiao Yi from the first time, however he was not an orphan. Since young he came from a poor family, and was a regular cowherd in the countryside. Due to his small and skinny figure he was often bullied by others. Hence, he was one of the male protagonists of the My Childhood is Tragic series. Coincidentally, he picked up a foundation establishment cultivator who was about to die and learned about immortal cultivation. Hence, the brave youth took a few large flatbreads and went on his way. After a few tests, he finally joined a first-rate deity sect, Neschazarei sect. However, due to his extremely poor aptitude for the pentaspirit veins, he was arranged to be in the outer sect. The outer sect basically belonged to the category of people who had no hope of reaching the Great Tao. Especially in a first-rate deity sect like Neschazarei sect, the outer sect disciples were collectively left to fend for themselves, and some of them were even worse than laborers. The cultivation resources they obtained were even fewer. No matter how hard they worked, they could only stop at foundation. In fact, most of the disciples could not even reach foundation in their entire lives. In the beginning, Yi Qing-song thought that he was lucky to have stepped onto the path of longevity. However, slowly, he realized that this path was even crueler than before. There were many outer sect disciples, however, due to their poor aptitudes, the higher-ups of the sect had never placed their eyes on these disciples, which caused some chaos in the management. Various dark oppressions would occasionally occur, however, no one came to manage them. Hence, Yi Qing-song once again began to grind the My Childhood Can Be Even More Tragic dungeon. Forget about the resources distributed by the sect, even the monthly grain abstention pellets would be privately withheld by the disciples of the sect in various ways. Chapter 281. Although he wasn't satisfied with this kind of life, Yi Qingsong didn't give up on the hope of becoming stronger. It was a chance encounter. An inner sect disciple received a mission to subdue a level 4 demon beast. That demon beast was extremely cunning. It hid in a cave and was very good at hiding. Someone needed to lure it out. Although these disciples were already at foundation building, no one was willing to be the bait. So after promising benefits, they found the outer sect disciples. A rank 4 demonic beast was equivalent to the early stage of the gold core realm. For the ordinary outer sanctum disciples who were in the qi refining realm, it was too dangerous. Although the resources in the outer sanctum were scarce, there were very few people who dared to risk their lives. But Yi Qingsong accepted it. He bet everything on this mission. He risked his life to lure out that demon beast and help the inner sect disciples to successfully complete the mission. But after that, he didn't ask for the benefits promised by those people. He went back without taking anything. It had to be said that Yi Qingsong was someone who knew how to invest. He didn't take anything, but a few people owed him a favor for no reason. Their impression of him increased greatly. Usually, they would greet him when they saw him. And the outer sect was a group of people who were used to sailing with the wind. Seeing that he was familiar with the inner sect people, no one dared to bully him anymore. He could finally start cultivating seriously. He spent 2 years to go from Qi Disciple Level 1 to Qi Disciple Level 5. At this time, the bottleneck of cultivation came and his cultivation could no longer increase. He needed a Level 3 pill, a high-grade spirit gathering pill, to break through. But there were very few Level 1 pills in the outer sect, not to mention Level 3. But it was such a coincidence. An accident, he received the inheritance of the alchemy sect. Not only did he become an encyclopedia of pill recipes, he also received a pill refining divine tool. He relied on these lost pill recipes to start from scratch and walked on the path of alchemy master. With the divine tool in hand, pill refining was as easy as kneading mud balls. Every day, he ate pills like they were jelly beans. His cultivation also rose from Qi Disciple Level 5 to Qi Disciple Level 9. Then he was stuck again. Although the foundation building pill was already prepared, he didn't get the chance to break through. He also understood that this was a problem with his aptitude. There was no cultivation technique that could break through the limitations of the spirit root. But as a protagonist, how could he admit defeat so easily? Since there was no such cultivation technique in the world, he would create one. Hence, when Yi Qingsong couldn't break through for a long time, he started to experiment on a new cultivation technique. He really succeeded in breaking through the limitations of his spiritual root, allowing him to quickly absorb the 5 elements of spiritual qi. Even those with the pentaspirit roots could cultivate like those with the heaven spirit roots. His cultivation also began to take a qualitative leap. In just 10 years, he successfully built his foundation and entered the inner sect. Later on, in the inner sect competition, he took first place in the foundation establishment group. He had also comprehended sword intent in the grand competition, and from then on he had walked on the path of sword cultivation. Such a dazzling counterattack also won him the favor of a soul formation supremacy in the sect, and he was accepted as a disciple. From then on, it was as if his life had turned on a cheat, and it kept on rising, fighting demonic cultivators, challenging the secret realm, and obtaining a pet. He even subdued an ancient evil serpent as his mount. It only took him 2,000 years to break through to the soul formation stage, and from then on, he stood at the peak of life. He was a person who could distinguish between gratitude and grudges, and was merciless towards his enemies and demonic cultivators. He believed that if you respect me, I will return you tenfold. If you offend me in the slightest, I will exterminate you. However, he took great care of the sect. Although he had suffered a lot in the past, he understood that this was the norm in the cultivation world, and he did not hold any grudges. Instead, he had been protecting Nest Chazerei sect until the end of his lifespan and reincarnation. That's right, he did not ascend. Even though he had reached the soul formation paragon in the later stages, he never found the opportunity to ascend, nor did he forcefully draw down the ascension lightning tribulation. Furthermore, he was not like Xiao Yi, who was a stallion who showed mercy everywhere. He was wholeheartedly devoted to her, and had never looked at other women in the eye. Not to mention, he did not have any immoral actions like raising a human cauldron. Zhu Yao silently gave him a thumbs up on this point. His wife was the chambered disciple of a nascent soul practitioner in the same sect, and her name was Chu Yi. That's right, she was the junior martial sister Chu Yi whom Little Bai had been pining for, the cricket's disciple. In the end, she was the male lead's woman. As for Little Bai, he was a character in the plot as well. However, he was not a supporting male character, nor was he a supporting male character. He could not even be considered as cannon fodder. He was just a background character. In the plot, he did not even have the chance to appear. The only time he appeared was when Chu Yi was recalling the past, and she casually mentioned this. When I was young, there was a senior martial brother Little Bai who took great care of me. Unfortunately, he barged into Tranquil Valley in the end, and never returned. This point was evidently different from what she wrote in the plot. Or it was because of her appearance that the plot changed. And Yi Qingsong became the sovereign of the cultivation world in the end. No matter who mentioned him, they would give him a thumbs up and call him a true hero. And because of his iron-fisted policies, an unprecedented period of unity appeared in the cultivation world. Basically, the heretic practitioners who had done all sorts of evil deeds had nowhere to hide. The cultivation world was peaceful for 10,000 years. The more Zhu Yao read, the more confused she became. How could this person be considered as a bug? At the very most, he could only be considered as an emotional person, right? He completely did not have the slightest hint of taking revenge on society. Not only did the world not collapse, it had instead become even more stable. That bug imprint, it couldn't have grown in the wrong place, right? Just as Zhu Yao was puzzled, the scene changed, and it was actually several hundred years after Yi Qingsong's death. Currently, the cultivation world was in a state of chaos. Massacres and blood reeked everywhere, and everyone looked as though they had been injected with chicken blood. For the sake of a single sentence, they could actually fight to the death. Even Zhu Yao could not believe her own eyes. Was this still that stable cultivation world? She could faintly hear a few words similar to Yi Qingsong's. If you respect me, I will return you 10 times. If you offend me, I will exterminate you. Was this the idol effect? She finally understood why Yi Qingsong was a bug. It was because of his Tao. He had once been oppressed, and then, he rose up to resist. Hence he entered the Tao through killing. Towards heretic practitioners or demons that violated the rules, sanctimonious practitioners would never be lenient, and would definitely kill them. Although his Tao heart was stable, his sins of killing were more than 10 times that of others. Most probably, this was also the reason why he was unable to ascend in the end. Many people in the future would learn from him, wanting to enter the Tao through killing. Once the sins of killing increased, the malevolent aura they would emit would be heavy. In the early stages, they might give others the misconception that they were powerful, and from there, they would sink into killing. They were a little like those people on the battlefield whose eyes had turned red from killing. However, these people were different from Yi Qingsong. He had his own considerations in his heart, and the people he killed were all people he felt deserved to be killed. His goal was to stop killing with killing. He would never easily start a fight. As for the others, they would kill for the sake of killing. In the later stages, everyone thought that as long as they killed more people, they would be able to attain the Tao. Yi Qingsong relied on his own strength, and with a bad hand he played out a good ending. However, unintentionally, he led the people of the world onto the Tao of devils. As Zhu Yao read to the end, she could no longer bear to continue watching. There was a limit to the number of people in the cultivation world. If they continued killing like this, in just a few hundred years, there would not be many practitioners left. However, there were still people who remembered the words "enter the Tao through killing," and had even begun to extend their hands into the mortal world. As practitioners against unarmed mortals, it was needless to say what the final result would be. The destruction of the world was something that could be done in minutes. Zhu Yao woke up from her meditative state. Her head was drenched in cold sweat, as she was frightened by the hell-like scene at the end. After taking a few deep breaths, she finally calmed down. Thinking about the bug this time, her entire being felt terrible. How was she supposed to fix a bug like this? The bug this time was completely not Yi Qingsong's fault alone. In the end, his 3 views were normal, and there was nothing wrong with him at all. In the end, the reason why the world was destroyed was because of those people who courted death themselves, right? Could it be that she had to run over to Yi Qingsong and talk about the truth, kindness, and beauty, so that he would not enter the Tao through killing, but through love? It would be strange if he did not treat her as a lunatic. Furthermore, there were 3,000 Daos, and every single person had their own Tao. This was decided based on their personal experiences and comprehension. She was basically unable to interfere. Looking at the strong nature of the plot, Yi Qingsong would still walk on the same Tao in the end. What should she do? For a bug like this where no one was wrong, she basically did not know how to fix it. Did the missions that Realm Spirit gave her have to be harder and harder, hey? She felt that her life was facing an unprecedented test. Just from this plot alone, she completely could not see the slightest bit of problem with Yi Qingsong. She basically could not find a point to start from. With regards to things that she could not figure out, Zhu Yao could only put them aside for now. No matter what, she had to raise her cultivation first. When the time comes, she would befriend the male protagonist, and then help him at the right time. She wanted to see if she could turn him back from the path of killing. The plot also began from the male protagonist facing that 4th-ranked demonic beast. There was still time for everything. Counting the time, there were still 5 years left. She had to take this opportunity to raise her cultivation as soon as possible. Only when she had the strength would she have the ability to help others. Zhu Yao began to focus on her cultivation. She did not know if it was because of that transparent spiritual energy in her body, but her cultivation speed was not much different from back then when she had the single lightning spirit vein. Furthermore, she realized that no matter which type of spiritual energy in her body, they were all especially close to that transparent spiritual energy. There was completely no situation where the other 5 types of spiritual energy were incompatible with water and fire. She silently guessed that this transparent spiritual energy was like the world favorable impression ability in the past, a cheat that Realm Spirit had stuffed into her. When she thought of this, she had a feeling that she would be scammed in the future. 5 years later, her cultivation level rose to the middle stage of the foundation building realm, but before she could go looking for someone, just when she woke up from her meditative state, the side of her waist suddenly shone, and a white light flashed. She opened her storage pouch and took it out. It was a familiar-looking sound transmission talisman, and a familiar male voice sounded from within. Yu Yao, I'm Jianshang. Where have you been? If you hear me, hurry and reply, there's a big business. Profiteer? She suddenly recalled that back then, when she reached the 3rd stage of the sect, Jianshang had stuffed a sound transmission talisman into her hands. Hence, she sent a strand of spiritual energy into it, and replied, It's me. What's the matter? The sound transmission seemed to instantly light up again, and Jianshang eagerly asked, Daoist you finally replied to me. I've been looking for you for 2 years. Just where have you been? Could she say that she had long forgotten about him? I went into closed-door training, and just came out. No wonder. He heaved a sigh of relief. Oh right, which mountain did you enter in the end? Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, and decided not to speak the truth. Talisman Spiritual Mountain. Talisman Spiritual Mountain. Didn't I say that you aren't allowed to enter that place? Forget it, he said with a regretful tone. There's a big business. Do you want to come? What business? He said mysteriously. One of my senior martial brothers accepted a mission, and the reward is 400 pieces of mid-grade spirit stones. He simply has to subdue a 4th-ranked demonic beast near Key Forest. Coincidentally, you're proficient in the art of taming beasts. With you around, this mission will definitely be a piece of cake. 4th-ranked demonic beast. Key Forest. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Wasn't this the first time the male lead left the mountain? Daoist you, how is it? Including you, there are only 6 people in total. We can earn a few dozen mid-grade spirit stones. Alright, I'll go. Alright, we're already at the mountain gate. Hurry and come over. Men. Just as she was worrying about how to approach the male lead, she never expected that Jianshang just happened to be one of the people who accepted the mission. She left Skybound Peak and immediately walked to the mountain gate. From afar, she could already see a few people gathered there, and Jianshang was standing right at the side. He had evidently seen her as well, as he waved his hand at her agitatedly. Just as Zhu Yao was about to greet him, a shocked voice sounded from the side. "Grandma." In front of her, a youth dressed in a green robe had just come down from his sword, looking as though he had just returned from a mission outside. He looked to be about 15 or 16 years old, had a very tall figure, and his face looked a little familiar. Little Tyrant. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. After not seeing him for 5 years, his head had grown a little too quickly. "Grandma, why did you come out of closed-door training? Sect Master." Zhu Yao covered his mouth, stopping him from continuing his words. Though she was forced to become Chu Zhang's senior martial aunt, there were not many disciples who had actually seen her before. However, there were only a few disciples who had actually seen her. She still wanted to be familiar with the male protagonist. "Junior Marshal Sister Yu this is?" Jianshang coincidentally came over and looked at the two of them suspiciously. "Ho ho." Zhu Yao laughed. She definitely could not let Little Tyrant expose her identity, or else she wouldn't be able to leave. "This is a distant relative of mine." Zhu Yao blinked at Little Bai, and then lowered her hand. Little Bai frowned, his face was filled with disapproval. However, he still cooperated and replied. "Bai Ziyuan. So it's Junior Marshal Brother Bai." Jianshang looked at Zhu Yao and said, "Is he going on the mission as well?" Just as she was about to refute, Little Bai spoke up first. "Yes, I'm going with Grandma." After saying that, he even gave her a "if you don't let me go, I'm going to snitch on you" to the principal expression. Zhu Yao had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure it. This spoiled brat had grown up, and his wings had hardened. Jianshang was a little hesitant, but Little Bai said, "If I'm not going, Grandma won't go either." Only then did they reluctantly nod. "Junior Marshal Brother Jian, is the person you mentioned here yet?" The 4 people who had been waiting the entire time surrounded them as well. 2 men and 2 women. A Foundation female practitioner, who seemed to be the leader, sized Zhu Yao up a little suspiciously. "She's the one you're talking about?" Chapter 282. The doubt on the female practitioner's face grew heavier. She turned to look at Little Bai next to her, and was a little dissatisfied that he was only at the 10th level of essence. When she saw the emblem that only elite disciples had on his sleeves, she paused for a moment. In the end, she did not object to it, and sighed. "Since they're already here, then let's depart. We have already delayed for quite some time earlier. We have to rush over before noon." As she said that, she called for the crowd to fly towards the north on their flying swords. "Little Tyrant, lend me your flying sword." Zhu Yao immediately snatched a flying sword from Little Tyrant, used it as a means of transportation, and followed after the crowd. By Ziyuan's side, he did not resist, took out another mystic artifact, and followed after her. "Grandma, there are so many mystic artifacts in Skybound Peak. Why do you want to use mine?" He could not help but retort. Zhu Yao's expression turned awkward for a moment. "You don't understand, Grandma's taste is very high. If she wanted to use Skybound Peak's mystic artifact, she did not want to be called a bitch all day long. Grandma, if you sneak out of Skybound Peak like this, Sect Master will be angry." "I have no choice. I have important matters to attend to. No matter how big the matter is, you can't just sneak out like this," he said with a disapproving look. "What if you encounter danger?" "Don't worry, I will protect you." That's not what he was talking about. "Ha, forget it. I'll just watch over Grandma a little more. When I have the chance, I'll still have to inform the sect master." She sized up the crowd. Yi Qingsong was very easy to recognize. The one with the lowest cultivation level was him, at the first level of essence. He was the same as Little Tyrant, about 15 or 16 years old. His looks were average, and he had a common face. He belonged to the type that could not be distinguished even if he was thrown into a crowd. If not for the obvious word bug on his face, She really would not be able to associate him with the bugs she had encountered in the past. This person did not look the slightest bit like a male lead. After flying for about half an hour, they finally arrived at the edge of a forest. The leading girl had the surname Qin, and her cultivation level was at the late stages of foundation. The other girl was at the mid stages of foundation, while the other two male practitioners were at the late stages of foundation as well. Group leader Qin gathered everyone together and explained the demonic beast situation in detail. That was a stage for concealed rock beast. It had both metal and earth attributes and was extremely good at hiding. It lived in a karst cave at the edge of the forest. The terrain in the karst cave was complicated. If one entered carelessly, they would not be able to find their way out. Thus, the best method was to lure the concealed rock beast out. Of course, they had prepared the male lead as bait. This is firefly fragrance lure. Sister Qin handed a green stone to Yiqingsong. Take this and go in. For 6 hours, it will leave behind a white fluorescent light along the way. If you get lost inside, you can follow the white light to come out. Yiqingsong took it and nodded with a heavy expression, but his eyes were unexpectedly firm. Why didn't you use the tracking talisman? Little Tyrant interrupted. If we use a locator talisman, wouldn't it be better to directly lock onto the door? The moment he said this, one of the Foundation establishment middle-stage male cultivators glared at him and said sarcastically, "Humph, location talisman? Do you know how much a tracking talisman costs? If we catch a fourth-order demonic beast, it won't even be enough to buy 2 locator talismans." Little Bai's expression paled, and a hint of awkwardness flashed past his face. He indeed did not know. That male cultivator, however, did not beat around the bush. You elite disciples just don't know the suffering of us normal disciples. Do you think that talismans are everywhere on the streets? Zhu Yao frowned. These words were a little too much. This person's surname was Zhao, and he had been dissatisfied with the newly joined Zhu Yao and Little Bai ever since the very beginning. Enough! Party leader Qin's expression sank as well. She glared at Zhao Li. It's getting late. Before the sky turns dark, we must lure the concealed rock beast out. Only then did Zhao Li shut his mouth. The group of people walked to the entrance of the cave. The cave was huge and looked like a gigantic bridge. Deep roars of demonic beasts could be faintly heard from inside, accompanied by the howling of the wind. They could not be heard very clearly. Qin gave Yiqingsong a look. Yiqingsong took a deep breath and walked into the cave. Wait a minute. Zhu Yao took a few steps forward, and a white light flashed in her hand. She patted on his back and chuckled. Be careful. Yiqingsong had a strange look, yet he still nodded. He walked in, and in just a moment his figure could no longer be seen. Junior Marshal Sister Yu, how confident are you in taming this 4th-ranked demonic beast? Profiteer asked. I don't know either. Though her world-favorable impression ability was very useful, with a bug like the male protagonist by her side, she was really worried that something might happen. Let's talk after we see that beast. Profiteer nodded, pointed to the cave entrance, and said, This cave is so huge, most probably that Junior Marshal brother won't be able to come out in a short period of time. Before he could finish his sentence, a loud roar came from inside, and the entire cave entrance began to fall with a crashing sound of broken stones. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one had expected that Yiqingsong would encounter that demonic beast so quickly. Disperse, prepare for battle. Sister Qin solemnly shouted. Everyone did not have the time to chat, as they dispersed and summoned their weapons. Not even a moment later, the sound of running could be heard from the cave entrance. Yiqingsong sprinted out. His hair was a little messy, but he was not injured. Before everyone had the time to be surprised, a gigantic shadow suddenly appeared behind him, charging straight towards the cave entrance. Get down! Zhu Yao shouted. Yiqingsong reacted swiftly, rolling on the ground, and exiting the cave entrance. Immediately after, a sharp beast roar resounded. The voice was so loud, it resounded through the clouds. It was unknown if it was because of the echo in the cave, but even the entire ground began to tremble. With a rumble, A demonic beast whose entire body seemed to be covered in rocks appeared in front of everyone. It seemed to be extremely irritable. After roaring, it slapped its claw towards Yi Qingsong, who was the closest to it. He rolled a few times, yet he was still unable to dodge. That sharp claw was about to land on his body. In the scenario, Yi Qingsong was heavily injured because of this claw, and had almost lost his life. But this time was different. A wall of earth was instantly activated, rising in front of him, blocking that ruthless claw. He felt a heat on his back, and an earth-type defensive talisman floated out. He was startled for a moment, as he suddenly recalled the slap on his back from the newly joined Granny, before he entered the cave. Granny. He turned to look at her with a shocked expression. What are you looking at? Why aren't you running? Zhu Yao glared at him. You're the Granny, your entire family is filled with grannies. Yi Qingsong scrambled away from the demonic beast's attack range. Little tyrant, look after him. Zhu Yao turned to instruct Little Bai. With a wave of her hand, the wall of earth summoned by the earth-type defensive talisman earlier instantly rose, stopping the demonic beast's entire movement. This demonic beast's eyes were crimson red. Evidently, it was extremely furious. Zhu Yao planned to first restrict its movements, have it calm down, and then have a good chat with it. Who knew that in just a blink of an eye, just as the wall of earth was about to surround the demonic beast, the gigantic figure inside suddenly disappeared without a trace. It disappeared. Chun-Li's face was filled with shock. Looking around, he glared at Zhu Yao and said, Old hag, you couldn't have scared it back again, right? Zhu Yao's fury instantly surged out. Squad leader Qin Girli's expression, however, changed. Don't be distracted. The demonic beast is still here. The moment her words fell, that demonic beast suddenly appeared in the sky above Chun-Li, and pounced downwards. Chun-Li dodged in a flash, however, he was immediately slapped by the demonic beast's claw. The crowd exchanged glances, and a hint of hesitation flashed across their faces. Little Bai's heart even tensed up. The beastie in front of Zhu Yao had its mouth wide open, and was still whimpering. It hurts. It hurts so much. Just where does it hurt? How am I supposed to know if you don't tell me, hey? Zhu Yao pinched her nose. The intelligence of a fourth-ranked demonic beast was very limited. Though it had already calmed down, she really couldn't get an answer out of it for a moment. That beastie, however, grew even more aggrieved. Turning its head, it nudged her hand. It hurts. It's swollen, it hurts so much. Swollen? Zhu Yao was startled. After taking a closer look at its mouth, she realized that there was indeed a bulge on its mouth. However, because its entire body was made of rock-like skin, that bulge was not very obvious. Here? She touched that bulge. Its entire body bounced as though its sore spot had been touched. Its tears instantly flowed out, drenching Zhu Yao's entire body, as though it was taking a hot bath. It hurts. It stuck, it hurts so much. The bad guy threw it. Beastie hurts. It grew even sadder, and with a complaining tone, it cried out to her. Only then did Zhu Yao manage to sort out some clues. You're saying you're stuck by something? That's why it's swollen. The beastie nodded. Her expression darkened. Open your mouth. With an ah sound, it opened its mouth again. Zhu Yao pinched her nose and carefully looked at that cave-like mouth. Indeed, on the right side of its sharp teeth, she saw a three-pronged hook, and spiritual energy could faintly be seen flowing on top of it. It was actually a low-grade mystic artifact. Don't move, I'll help you take it out. Zhu Yao leaped and darted into that demonic beast's mouth. This frightened the crowd behind, who could not hear anything. Grandma. Little Bai simply felt his mind buzzing, as his mind turned blank. That demonic beast actually ate Grandma. Profiteer was dumbfounded as well. Though he had seen Junior Marshall's sister use subduing demonic beasts before, he had never seen such an obvious feeding situation. Little Bai pulled out his sword and charged towards the demonic beast. Before he could even reach the demonic beast, he heard the demonic beast howl in pain. A pillar of blood instantly sprayed out from the corner of its mouth like a fountain. In the next moment, Zhu Yao walked out from that demonic beast's mouth. In her hands was a three-pronged hook mystic artifact, and a white tooth. Little Bai's footsteps paused. His face was filled with shock. He could faintly hear Grandma saying something to that demonic beast. "I'm sorry I used too much force and pulled it too far." In reality, she was suffocated by the bad breath, and for a moment, she did not see clearly, and pulled out the tooth as well. "Yo, little tyrant, what are you doing here?" Bai Ziyuan. Grandma. Why did he feel as though he was being toyed with? The beastie's mouth was missing a thorn and a tooth. In an instant, the pain disappeared, and the entire beast instantly felt refreshed. It excitedly bounced a few times on the ground, causing the earth to shake. Then, it grinned at Zhu Yao, revealing a beautiful tooth cavity. It lowered its head and rubbed against Zhu Yao, letting out the professional cutesy language of the beast realm. Meow. Mn, if the tooth did not leak air, its pronunciation would be even more accurate. She subdued that demonic beast. Profiteer's face was filled with excitement. Only then did everyone heave sighs of relief, as they carefully approached Zhu Yao. Even Chun-Li, who was on the ground, crawled up as well, and looked at Zhu Yao with a greedy look. "Junior Martial Sister, you. Hurry and store this demonic beast into the spiritual beast pouch. If we capture it, our earnings will most likely double." Zhu Yao frowned, and looked towards Profiteer. "You're going to bring it back?" Profiteer said a little awkwardly. The mission simply said to get rid of this demonic beast, and not let it harass the nearby practitioners. "This is a 4th-ranked demonic beast," Chun-Li continued. "Even if we hand it over to the sect, the disciples who capture it will redeem it. Even if we don't bring it back, in any case it has already been tamed. Anyone can make a contract with it, and we will definitely be able to sell it for a good price." Chapter 283. Who said I'm going to sell it? Zhao Li was startled for a moment, and anger rose on his face. "Can't you just take it for yourself? Let me tell you, this beast was captured by everyone together. Everyone here has." Roar. Before he could even finish, the concealed rock beast suddenly roared at him, and in an instant, sprayed saliva all over his face. "If you make any more noise, I'll eat you." Meow. Rub my head, rub again. Zhao Li's face paled from fright. That roar had even caused his heart to tremble, and he hurriedly jumped a few steps back. Didn't you tame it? You knew it was me as well?" Zhu Yao rolled her eyes. "It wasn't you." Zhao Li shut his mouth, his face alternated between green and white. The teen girlie sighed, and had no choice but to mediate. "This junior martial sister, you tamed this demonic beast. I wonder how you plan to deal with this spiritual beast." Zhu Yao turned to look at the beastie, who was beginning to roll its stomach at her. She really couldn't make the decision. Taking a few steps forward, she softly asked, "Beastie, are you willing to form a contract with a human practitioner?" Meow. The beastie stopped rolling, and tilted its head with a confused look. "The contract is, in the future, you have to be with that person forever." Meow. "Beastie likes you." It coquettishly rolled a few times. "Beastie wants to be with you together. Not me, I'm talking about other practitioners." "Other?" It was startled for a moment. "Other practitioners just want to slap him away. Alright, it seemed like it wasn't willing. In the end, the world-favorable impression was only for her. She didn't dare to guarantee that if she brought it back, it wouldn't swallow the person who wanted to form a contract with it in one gulp. Zhu Yao turned to look at the others. "I've decided, let it go." "What?" Zhao Li jumped out again. "You're crazy, this is a 4th-ranked demonic beast. Even if you're not willing to sell it, what if this demonic beast goes out and harms the nearby residents after we leave?" "Harms?" Zhu Yao coldly laughed, and threw the trident mystic artifact in her hands in front of him. The reason why this demonic beast was so violent was because a practitioner used this mystic artifact to capture it alive. In the end, he failed to catch the beast, and the magic tool was left in its mouth. It was in so much pain that it kept making noises. In the end, isn't this disaster caused by the human cultivators themselves? In the end, who was the one who harmed who? I can guarantee that after I release it, it won't appear at the edge of the forest again." Zhao Li saw that he could not win the argument and could only retort, This has nothing to do with us. We're here on a mission. If he's alive, we want to see him. If he's dead, we want to see his corpse. If we fail the mission, wouldn't our efforts be in vain? I can explain the situation to the sect master. Xiaobai took a step forward and said, if senior brother is worried about this, there will naturally be people from the sect coming to check. You make it sound nice, but the spirit stones are gone just like that. Zhao Li was still somewhat unwilling. Zhu Yao said, if worse comes to worst, I don't want the reward that belongs to me. In any case, she was currently a tycoon, and any random brick in Skybound Peak would be worth a few hundred times more than theirs, alright? I don't want mine either. Little White immediately responded. I don't need it either. Unexpectedly, Yi Qing-song stood out as well, and gave her a grateful smile. Only then did Zhao Li become speechless. Seeing that no one had any objections, the matter was settled. Zhu Yao and that demonic beast had a good chat, before the concealed rock beast reluctantly returned to the karst cave, and promised to never come out again. The crowd had initially planned to return to the sect, but the sky was already dark, and this place was close to Key Forest, where heretic practitioners would occasionally appear. For safety reasons, everyone decided to stay in the nearest practitioner town for a night. They would return to the sect tomorrow morning. Zhu Yao was indeed tired as well. After bidding farewell to Little White and the rest, she began to meditate and recuperate. However, in the middle of the night, she suddenly felt a familiar oppressive aura, and she was startled awake. She looked at her surroundings, but it was quiet, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. She kept feeling that something was amiss, and her heart felt strange. When she opened the door, she bumped into Little White and Yi Qing-song, who had just come out. Just as she was about to greet them, an enraged beast's roar resounded from outside. It was especially clear in the silent night sky. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat, as though something was tugging at it. The others came out from their rooms as well. Evidently, they had all heard that roar. Grandma, what's that roar? Little White looked at her with a shocked expression. It's that concealed rock beast during the day. Zhu Yao grew even more worried. That roar was filled with despair and anger, and was completely different from the irritable one during the day. Where's senior marshal brother Zhao Li? Yi Qing-song asked. Only then did the crowd realize that one person was missing. Not good. Party leader Qin exclaimed. Zhu Yao was already flying towards the karst cave during the day on her flying sword, and her heart sank even more. She had underestimated the greed of humans too much. A few Foundation practitioners dared to challenge a fourth-ranked demonic beast, so naturally, they would dare to return to this place for greater benefits. The oppressive aura in the air grew even heavier. From afar, she could already see the fiery light soaring into the sky from the direction of the karst cave. Mixed within were the miserable cries of demonic beasts, and the cries of human practitioners. Even though there was still a distance between them, she could still smell the pungent scent of blood in the air. Although she had already made preparations in her heart, when she saw the situation over there, Zhu Yao was still stunned by the scene in front of her eyes. There was blood everywhere, and even the entire rock wall had been dyed red. That concealed rock beast was trapped in a corner of the rock wall by dozens of practitioners. A few pieces of its rock-covered skin were already missing, revealing its flesh and eerie white bones. It seemed to have already fallen into some sort of madness, and had completely lost its rationality. Its eyes were completely bloodshot, and its claws furiously clawed at the ground. However, it still stood in its original spot, allowing the various mystic arts of those practitioners to land on its body. It did not take a single step away, and was tightly protecting the thing behind it. And on the sound recording stone behind it, an illusory figure was currently floating. That was an old granny wearing a cyan gown. Zhu Yao simply felt her mind buzzing, and boundless rage surged into her heart, burning her to the point where her entire body was trembling. They actually used her image to lure this beastie out. Hurry, this demonic beast can't hold on any longer. Hurry and subdue it. A familiar voice loudly shouted from among the human practitioners. A contract formation rose up, and headed towards the demonic beast. The runes of the contract had black lines on them. This was a death contract. According to the legends, it was a vicious formation used to forcefully subdue demonic beasts. If the demonic beast had the slightest bit of resistance, the formation would directly devour the demonic beast's inner core, until its core shattered and it died. Even if it was successfully subdued, the demonic beast would still forcefully drop a rank. Zhu Yao's heart clenched, and she madly urged the flying sword beneath her feet. Before it could even reach, she immediately summoned her own sword intent, and directly attacked the death contract formation. A lightning phoenix whistled through the air, and instantly shattered the formation. With a long cry, it disappeared into the horizon. Beastie! Zhu Yao wished that she could turn around and give Zhao Li a good beating. However, she had no choice but to first call back the concealed rock beast's rationality. And then, that injured beastie could no longer hear her at all. It's you. When Zhao Li saw that his deed had been exposed, his expression changed, and a hint of panic flashed past his eyes. Just as he was about to speak, the concealed rock beast suddenly let out a long roar. Its entire body began to emit a red light, and the surrounding metal and earth spiritual energy began to wildly surge into its body. A huge pressure instantly swept out, and all of the practitioners could not even stand stably. This is... Zhao Li was startled. That demonic beast is forcefully breaking through. A practitioner cried out in fear. Squad leader Qin and the others rushed over as well, and when they saw the situation, they were all stunned. They turned to glare at Zhao Li at the side. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, how can you go back on your word? Take advantage of the night to call the wandering practitioners over before returning. I never agreed to let this demonic beast go. Zhao Li coldly snorted. The ones who agreed are you guys. Furthermore, this demonic beast has already gone insane. In a situation like this, we can only kill it before it breaks through. Otherwise, no one will be able to escape. I'm doing this for you. Boom. Before he could even finish, Zhu Yao immediately sent a bolt of heavenly lightning striking his body. Zhao Li simply felt his entire body aching, and his body was instantly charred black. His dantian was in immense pain, and his spiritual energy instantly dispersed. He immediately knelt down, and could not help but puke out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Zhu Yao in fear, and said, You, how dare you? Why wouldn't I dare? Zhu Yao coldly glanced at him, and said with emphasis on every single word, Zhao Li, only after seeing you do I understand what shamelessness is. A person like you is basically not worthy of cultivating into a deity. From today onwards, you are no longer a disciple of Neschazarei sect. Zhao Li's expression paled. After carefully sensing his body, he realized that the spiritual energy in his body could no longer be gathered, and his cultivation was rapidly falling. How can you destroy my spirit vein? I'm a disciple of the main mountain. Based on what? Based on what? Zhu Yao stared straight into his eyes, and said with emphasis on every single word. Based on the fact that I'm your ancestral Grand Master, the senior martial uncle of Neschazarei sect master, and the master of Skybound Peak. Based on my cultivation level at the middle stages of foundation, I can still turn you into dust. She once again summoned her sword intent, and a gigantic lightning phoenix instantly appeared in the sky. With a flap of its broad wings, several thousand lightning bolts struck onto the ground with a loud rumble. Everyone present was stunned by this scene. Although they couldn't recognize that it was sword intent, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts when they saw the streaks of lightning. Was this really the power of a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundational level? Zhao Li was instantly dumbfounded. After being glared at by that lightning phoenix, his entire body instinctively began to tremble. He basically did not hear what she said. Zhu Yao looked at the dozen or so practitioners gathered by Zhao Li, and said with emphasis on every single word. Does anyone have any objections? The practitioners exchanged glances, and a moment later, a late-stage foundation practitioner walked out while trembling. It's not convenient for us to interfere in Neschazarei sect's internal affairs. We were merely misled by this person. Since you guys have already dealt with this demonic beast, we will take our leave first. After saying that, the group of wandering practitioners left cleanly, and none of them dared to turn back to look at Zhao Li. "Marshal Granduncle Yu." The teen girlie took a step forward. Even until now, she still could not believe that the old man in front of her was that legendary granduncle of Skybound Peak. However, looking at the expression of the elite disciple by Ziyuan at the side, she knew that she was not lying. "I wonder how we should deal with this demonic beast now." This demonic beast had evidently lost its rationality. If it were to forcefully advance now, it would definitely lose control and self-destruct. At that time, no one within a radius of 5 kilometers would be able to escape. "I will try to stop it from advancing. You guys hurry and leave this place." Zhu Yao did not say much. Taking a deep breath, she immediately controlled her sword intent and flew towards the demonic beast, which was already completely surrounded by red light. It turned into a white gas and enveloped the entire demonic beast. The Zhao girlie and profiteer hesitated for a moment, before grabbing onto Zhao Li, who had already lost all of his cultivation, and flew away on their swords. As Zhu Yao suppressed the demonic beast's chaotic aura, she separated out a strand of spiritual energy to probe into it and awaken its rationality. Unfortunately, it was after all a 4th-ranked demonic beast, and its intelligence was not high in the first place. Adding that it was in a life-and-death situation earlier, awakening it was extremely difficult. Zhu Yao worked hard for a long time, but very quickly, she began to feel a little powerless. She hated this foundation-level body. If her cultivation was a little higher, or if she was able to use her divine sense, it would not be this difficult. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy entered her body through her back. Zhu Yao turned to look. "The hell, little tyrant, didn't I tell you guys to hurry and leave?" "Grandma, how can I possibly leave you alone?" Little tyrant said with a righteous look. "Furthermore, if anything happens to you, the sect master will definitely punish me." "Then what's the matter with you?" Zhu Yao glared at Yi Qingsong at the side. Yi Qingsong smiled, and then said with a stern look, "I have yet to thank Granny for saving my life in the day. So I can't leave Grandma alone." Little tyrant said with a determined look. "And I can't not repay your kindness either." Yi Qingsong said with a determined look. The two of them exchanged glances, and then smiled at each other. They were indeed a pair of affectionate and loyal youths. They were definitely worthy of the 10 Outstanding Young Pioneers Award. Towards such outstanding youths, Zhu Yao was naturally filled with gratitude. "My ass. Flips table. The hell, isn't it worse for the two of you to stay?" At the very least, she could still give it a try if she was alone. Even if she couldn't, she could still switch to another avatar. Now that there were 2 additional burdens, she didn't even have the chance to log off. "Alright? 10 outstanding your granny, outstanding your granny. I'll have to trouble you two to scram, alright? Don't cause any more trouble. We won't be leaving." The 2 young pioneers nodded heavily. The hell? Zhu Yao really wanted to pinch the 2 of them to death. The concealed rock beast's aura began to explode, and the seal formed by Zhu Yao's sword intent was suddenly broken. A ray of fiery light charged out, and the sword intent completely disintegrated. Zhu Yao simply felt a huge pain in the depths of her dantian, and she puked out a mouthful of blood. "Grandma! Granny!" the 2 young pioneers exclaimed at the same time. "What are you shouting for? Run!" Zhu Yao picked up the 2 youths, and was about to fly away on her flying sword. That red light grew even brighter, and it looked as though it was about to explode in all directions. "It's over, we're dead for sure." P. Suddenly, a green light flashed in her bosom, and a small green ball flew out. It grew with the wind, and in a blink of an eye, it turned into a gigantic pea. It occupied half of the sky, and immediately after, that round pea, within a sound, swallowed the rampaging demonic beast within a sound, just like the big pea in the Pac-Man game. The 3 of them, that the entire place was silent. Chapter 284. P. The pea let out a voice that sounded like it was asking for praise. In an instant, the pea turned back into the size of a basketball and flew in front of her. P. Zhu Yao looked around at the pea. It really was the one she picked up. What did it do earlier? It swallowed a demonic beast that was rampaging? She had raised it for so many days, yet she had never seen it eat anything. Did it have to have such a heavy taste right from the start? Zhu Yao grabbed onto the green ball and shook it violently. P, are you alright? Don't randomly eat such strange things, hey. P. That's a demonic beast, hurry and spit it out. What if you're allergic to it? She began to search for its mouth in a fluster, but she couldn't even find a crack on this round pea's body. The pea struggled a few times. P. Be good, hurry and spit it out. I'll water you in the future, alright? P. The pea jumped out from her hands. It grew larger once again and opened its mouth wide. Awu, her vision suddenly turned dark. Zhu Yao, that little bai, that Yiqing song, that the pea swallowed the three of them as well. I'm sorry, I seem to have raised something strange. Zhu Yao was swallowed. She was swallowed by the pea she raised. When she regained her senses, her surroundings were pitch black, without a single trace of light. Strangely, she didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. Instead, she felt very comfortable. Her feet were soft and it felt good. It was even elastic. She could not help but step on it a few more times. Just this texture alone could beat all branded carpets. Just as she was about to take a closer look, she heard a cry. So heavy. Zhu Yao was shocked, and instantly left the carpet. Why did this voice sound a little familiar? Little tyrant? Grandma? Zhu Yao cast a fire art, and her surroundings instantly lit up. Little tyrant was lying next to her feet. Two familiar footprints were imprinted on his chest. Are you alright? She helped up little tyrant on the ground. Little Bai shook his head. I'm fine. I just felt something smash me a few times earlier. Ho ho ho. It definitely wasn't her. Zhu Yao casually patted on his chest, destroying the evidence. It's good that you're fine. Where's the other one? Grandma, I'm here. Yiqing Song's voice came from the side. His clothes were also neat, and there were no injuries on his body. Not even footprints. Very good, no one was injured. Only then did Zhu Yao begin to inspect her surroundings. This seemed to be the passageway of a cave, and it was very deep. Weren't we eaten? Why are you here? Yiqing Song asked. Zhu Yao touched the stone wall, and she could faintly sense the ripples of a teleportation formation. We should have been teleported to another place. This seems to be an underground tunnel. If I'm not wrong, it should be inside that karst cave. Inside the karst cave. The two young pioneers were shocked. The inside of the karst cave was complicated. How could they get out? What's that? Little tyrant suddenly pointed at a spot in front of them. In the pitch-black passageway, a faint red light could be seen. They took a few steps forward. A demonic beast that was as tall as a human was curled up in the middle. It seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Isn't this the one just now? Yiqing Song was shocked. Concealed rock beast. Zhu Yao hurriedly stepped forward and used her spiritual energy to inspect it. She realized that the aura on its body was stable, and there was nothing wrong with it. She instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it did not self-destruct. Little tyrant walked forward as well, and carefully inspected it for a moment. Why did it turn red, and it became so much smaller? Zhu Yao took a closer look. Though this beast's entire body had turned red, and its size had shrunk by several times, the spiritual energy on its body had become even more condensed. Even the wounds on its body had begun to heal. However, its injuries were too severe, and it would most likely not wake up for at least a year. It mutated. Zhu Yao said with certainty. It failed its advancement, and became a third-ranked demonic beast. However, because it forcefully interrupted its advancement, it mutated into a red color. She did not know if this was a good or bad thing. Mutated beasts were stronger than regular beasts, but it had dropped another rank, and had fallen into a deep sleep. It seemed like it would have to sleep for at least a year. A green pea rolled out from under the red demonic beast's claw. As though it had shrunk in an instant, it turned into the size of a pearl. It's that pea earlier. Little tyrant was shocked, and immediately summoned his own weapon. However, that pea rolled on the ground, yet it did not make any sound at all. Zhu Yao took a step forward, squatted down and picked up the pea. She carefully inspected it, Yet, she did not discover any abnormalities. Grandma, just what is this? I don't know either. Zhu Yao shook her head. Back then, when she picked it up, it was indeed just a regular pea. However, she never expected that by simply swallowing the concealed rock beast, and then teleporting them to this place, it would be able to suppress its rampage. She faintly felt that it was definitely not simple. However, it did not have much spiritual intelligence, and could only repeat the word pea. Earlier, it most likely just wanted to bring us here to see the concealed rock beast. It doesn't have any ill intentions. Furthermore, the demonic beast's rampage was most likely suppressed by it. However, she did not know how it did it exactly. Let's hurry and leave this place, shall we? Zhu Yao kept the pea. The paths in this cave are complicated, and we don't know where it leads to either. The two of you have yet to undergo grain liberation, so we can't stay here for long. Then what about this demonic beast? Little Bai pointed at the beastie on the ground. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, and then casually added a few defensive formations on it. There shouldn't be a problem like this. Only then did she bring the two young pioneers into the passageway. Only after going deeper in did she realize just how big this cave was. There were forks everywhere, and every single path would split into countless other paths. They walked around and around, and they had already become dizzy. They basically did not know where they were. Even she herself could not remember how long they had walked for, to the point where even she, who had the highest cultivation level, felt a little tired. Let's rest for a moment. Only then did the three of them stop. Zhu Yao turned to look, and little Tyrant was already drenched in sweat from exhaustion. Yi Qingsong, who was at the back, was even paler, as he heavily panted. His cultivation level was the lowest here, so it was extremely difficult for him to keep up with their footsteps. However, he did not complain the entire time, nor did he call for them to stop. She had to admit that he was a real man. Zhu Yao sighed. She placed down a spirit-gathering formation in the surroundings, and instructed them to replenish their spiritual energy in time. The two youths obediently nodded, and then began to meditate. She took out the pea from her bosom and studied it for a moment, yet she was still unable to see what was different about it. It was the same as what the girly Xiaoqian had said before. Forget about awakening its spiritual intelligence, it did not even have a soul. Granny! Yi Qingsong, who was meditating at the side, suddenly called out. He was currently looking at her with a confused look. Amen. What's the matter? He said with a stern look. Qingsong has a question that he has always wanted to ask you. I've never loved before. Ah. He was startled for a moment. Sorry. This was purely out of reflex. Continue. Can I ask, Granny? Why do you want to save that demonic beast? He said with a confused look. Demonic beasts and practitioners are enemies in the first place. Though they can be kept as spiritual beasts, in the grand scheme of things, they will not rest until one of them dies. Even if Granny were to save that demonic beast today, it might be killed by other practitioners in the future. Amen. This is a very deep question. Zhu Yao stroked her chin, pondered for a moment, and then said, Actually, there's no reason. The first time I met that beast, it clearly could have swallowed me in a single gulp, but it didn't. It gave me sufficient trust, and felt that I wouldn't harm it. I simply returned the same trust to it. It didn't kill me, so I helped it pull out its teeth. Oh wait, I pulled out its thorns. Believe me, the tooth was just an accident. As for what happened after that, you saw it yourself. Zhao Li used my image to lure it out. It was injured to such an extent, yet it still stood at its original spot, wanting to protect that fake image. The person it wanted to use its life to protect was me. Even a demonic beast is so loyal to its friends. As a human, why can't I do the same? So it's only right for me to use my life to save it. As for the future you mentioned, Zhu Yao smiled. What the future holds is a matter for the future. Perhaps one day, it will still die, or perhaps saving it will harm other practitioners. The cause and effect of the world are unclear in the first place. If I had to think of so many causes and effects before doing anything, where would I have the time to do proper things? What I can do is to follow my heart from that moment. At the very least, I did not betray my conscience earlier. Yi Qingsong seemed to have sensed something, as though he had understood something. He seemed to have grown even more confused, however. His eyes grew even emptier, as he muttered, "Follow my heart. Follow my heart. What's going on? Hey, are you alright?" Zhu Yao raised her hand, planning to pat him. However, a dense spiritual energy suddenly bounced back from his body. Whoa! Zhu Yao was shocked, and her palm felt a little numb. The surrounding spiritual energy suddenly began to turn chaotic. As though the 5 types of spiritual energy were being attracted by something. They wildly surged towards Yi Qingsong. "Granny!" His face was filled with confusion and panic as well. The excessive amount of spiritual energy caused his entire body to feel uncomfortable. His face began to pale, and beads of sweat began to form on top of his head. "This is..." "Hurry and adjust your breathing, sit down and guide the spiritual energy into your body," Zhu Yao solemnly said. "Calm your mind, don't panic. Just think about what you comprehended earlier." Only then did he once again sit down in a lotus position. Taking a deep breath, he guided the spiritual energy gathered in the surroundings into his body. Little Tyrant was startled by this sudden movement as well. "Grandma, this is?" He had an epiphany. Zhu Yao gave a simple explanation, and then pulled Little Bai to sit a little further away. She adjusted the spiritual gathering formation a little, and stood guard at the side. Little Bai's expression was strange, as he blankly stared at him for a moment. A hint of envy flashed past his eyes, as he followed Zhu Yao and sat down to stand guard. Yi Qingsong meditated for a total of 10 to 12 hours, and the surrounding spiritual energy slowly calmed down as well. His cultivation had leaped from the 1st level of essence to the 5th level of essence as well. It was as though he was sitting on a plane. The speed at which he rose was incredibly fast. When he opened his eyes, a day had already passed. Taking a deep breath, he sensed the tremendous amount of spiritual energy in his body. A hint of a smile flashed past his honest face, as he looked at Zhu Yao with a little excitement. "Granny! I saw it, I saw it." As expected of the male protagonist, he rose 5 levels in an instant. "Congratulations, junior martial brother Yi." Little Bai smiled as well. Yi Qingsong took a deep breath, as though he was trying to suppress the excitement in the depths of his heart. He stood up, and respectfully bowed towards Zhu Yao. "Thank you for your guidance, Granny." Qingsong was able to break through the bewilderment barrier, and raise his mental state. Qingsong will never forget Granny's great kindness. "You're exaggerating." Zhu Yao waved her hand, and patted on his shoulder. She could not help but feel a little excited in the depths of her heart. "I merely said a few words casually. The reason why you were able to gain an epiphany is all thanks to you. Not bad, lad. You have a bright future ahead of you." Only then did he let out a shy smile. He never expected that she had the ability to allow others to gain an epiphany. Zhu Yao instantly felt that she was awesome. Her entire person's level had risen, you know? She suddenly had the thought of taking in a disciple. What should she do? The male protagonist was able to raise 5 levels just by listening to a few words. If she had a disciple, wouldn't that be? Wait a minute. The male protagonist seemed to be a bug. He was leveling up too quickly. Didn't that mean that he was even closer to his goal of becoming a national idol? The time for the entire nation to enter the Dao through killing would then be. The hell? Just what in the world was she doing? I say, student little Tsong. Zhu Yao felt like crying as she pulled onto Yi Qingsong's hand. If I were to say that everything I said earlier was a lie, would you not believe me? Promise me, let's start from the beginning again, alright? Was it too late to back out now? In this world, there was only one disease that could not be cured, and that was having a cheap mouth. For a moment, she did not shut her mouth properly, and allowed the male protagonist to gain an epiphany. After knowing the truth, Zhu Yao's tears began to fall. Along the way, she could not help but send out light beams of resentment towards a certain person. Granny. His face was filled with anxiety. Did Qingsong do something wrong? No, you're just doing too well. Too well. He grew even more flustered, as he thought that she was dissatisfied with him. Granny, don't be angry. The aptitude of my spirit veins is too poor. My epiphany only allowed me to reach the 5th level of essence. Don't worry, I will continue to work hard in the future. Please don't. I'm saying, you're already very good. Don't continue rising any further. It's really scary, alright? Only then did he nod his head doubtfully. Towards Yi Qingsong, Zhu Yao really did not know what to do. Logically speaking, she really could not bring herself to suppress a good youth like him who had a correct outlook on the world. More importantly, even if she could harden her heart, she could not find a place to do it. According to the plot, the only thing that could be considered as a cheat in the rise of this inspirational youth was that pellet ancestor's inheritance. However, if not for his own comprehension abilities, even if he had the inheritance, it would be useless. In the modern era, how could he casually learn 5,000 years of Chinese knowledge? There weren't many Einsteins either. So in the end, the reason why he became a pellet refinement grandmaster was really because of his own abilities and comprehension abilities. As for that heaven-defying mystic art he created later on, there was no need to talk about it. Right now, she had encountered a dead knot that she could not undo at all. Chapter 285. Zhu Yao raised her head to take a look. As expected, a dot of light appeared in front of them, and it was growing brighter. Zhu Yao was ecstatic. Could it be the exit? Just as she was about to head forward to take a look, that ray of light suddenly split into two, and they were growing closer and closer, emitting out a faint green light. Why did she feel that these two rays of light looked like two eyeballs? The hell, they really were eyeballs. Only when she got closer did she realize that it wasn't a ray of light. It was clearly a gigantic caterpillar. A gigantic caterpillar that occupied the entire tunnel. Run! Zhu Yao grabbed the youth with one hand and sprinted in the direction they came from. That caterpillar seemed to have discovered them, as it was actually chasing after them. It let out a slithering sound along the way. The chase was incredibly fast, and in just a moment, the distance between them was only a few dozen meters. The hell, this caterpillar must be a mutated one, right? She had never seen a caterpillar that could crawl this fast. Zhu Yao had no choice but to circulate her spiritual energy and cast a wind-type mystic art, running and flying. They tried to get rid of the bug following them by turning and turning, but the bug seemed to be obsessed with them. No matter how they turned, it was always ready to find the right direction. It chased them all the way, and with a cry, its entire head began to split open, revealing a black hole. There were circles of teeth all around it, spreading all the way to the inside of its body. A putrid stench immediately filled the entire passageway, and green mucus flowed all over the ground. The hell, she definitely did not transmigrate into Xianxia, but a horror movie, hey. This was a little too heavy, wasn't it? Grandma, just what in the world is that? Little Tyrant panicked as well. When he turned around to take a look, his face paled. I don't know either. That caterpillar did not have any spiritual energy or demonic energy. It wasn't a demon, nor was it a beast. It seemed to be purely a caterpillar that was overnourished. Don't bother about it. Hurry and run. Run as fast as you can. That caterpillar was getting closer, and just as that gigantic mouth was about to reach them, Zhu Yao could no longer be bothered about anything else. Flying sword. She shouted out loudly, summoning her own sword. With a wave of her hand, she placed down a wind-type defensive formation, temporarily blocking that caterpillar. Then, she placed down a barrier around herself, and stood on her flying sword. The two of them also came to their senses. They immediately drew their swords and set up a barrier. This passage was too small, and it was indeed very difficult to use a sword. However, with the barrier, the passage could be expanded. As they flew forward, they shoveled a pile of gravel from the stone wall. The three of them were advancing rapidly like a bulldozer. Needless to say, this method was pretty good. Although it came with a dusty special effect, his escape speed was more than doubled. An hour later, they could no longer hear the sound of the caterpillar slithering behind them. Got rid of them? The two young pioneers were still in a state of shock. Zhu Yao stopped the bulldozer and took a deep breath. Maybe, She felt as though she had finished running away from all the roads in this lifetime. Little Tyrant and Yi Qingsong were tired as well. They sat on the ground, and the spiritual energy in their bodies had long been depleted. Let's rest for a moment. Zhu Yao heaved a long sigh of relief. Just as she was about to sit down, she heard a series of gnawing sounds coming from the stone wall. What the hell? Before she could even react, the entire stone wall suddenly collapsed. A gigantic caterpillar's head broke out from the wall, and there were still some gravel that had yet to be completely gnawed in its mouth. The hell, this caterpillar really loved them. It would rather dig a hole in the wall than let them go. Hurry and dodge. Zhu Yao was only able to pull Little Bai, who was closest to her, while Yi Qingsong was forced to the other side by the rolling rocks. The caterpillar appeared right in the middle just like that. Disgusting mucus dripped down from its gigantic mouth. As it moved towards them, Zhu Yao's heart clenched. This caterpillar was not hard to deal with, but the main problem was that they were inside the cave. If she were to make a move, the cave would collapse, and they would be buried alive inside. However, in the current situation, they were going to be eaten. She could only give it a try. She gritted her teeth, and the mystic art in her hands was about to take form. P. The P, which had been in her embrace the entire time, suddenly woke up. With a whoosh, it grew into a gigantic ball, and instantly occupied the entire passage. Zhu Yao was overjoyed. P. It woke up? P. The P called out again. Suddenly, with a nah sound, it opened its huge green mouth towards the caterpillar. Could it be that it was going to swallow this caterpillar in one gulp like before? That's great. Her heart was instantly filled with excitement. P. I won't blame you for having a heavy taste anymore. The P's mouth grew larger and larger, and then turning its head, it puked all over the ground. Zhu Yao. By Ziyuan. Yi Qingsong. Zhu Yao's mood instantly plummeted to the bottom of a valley. Was this because it was disgusted by its disgusting appearance? Was this the time to be disgusted? Ugh. What happened to the most basic trust between a human and a P? The P's voice weakened, and its entire body instantly shrunk to the size of a basketball. Even its emerald green color earlier had dimmed quite a bit, and the P's entire body was filled with sadness. Just how disgusted was it, hey? The caterpillar, however, instantly became agitated. Its body instantly sped up, turning its head and pouncing towards their direction. PP. Zhu Yao called out, but it was already too late. The caterpillar had already swallowed the pea that was the size of a basketball, and just as it was about to disappear into its mouth, suddenly, long green thorns instantly grew out from the pea's body. Before the caterpillar could even close its mouth, those thorns instantly pierced through the caterpillar's entire head. The pea that was still smooth and round earlier, instantly turned into a hedgehog. As it pierced through the caterpillar's body, it was still puking out. All right. It seemed like it was truly disgusted by this caterpillar. After receiving this attack, the caterpillar began to struggle with all its might before its death. Its entire gigantic caterpillar began to wriggle wildly, and like tofu, the stone walls were instantly crushed by it. In an instant, the ground shook, and even the passageway began to collapse. Not good, this place is going to collapse. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. As she cast an art with her hands, she shouted towards Yi Qingsong on the other side. Set up a defensive barrier. Just as they finished setting up the barrier, the stone walls above them began to collapse, and a large number of rolling rocks came crashing down. The passageway was buried by more and more rocks, and she could even hear the sounds of rocks cracking above her. Just when Zhu Yao thought that she was going to be buried alive underground, unexpectedly, a large amount of light suddenly scattered down. Exit. Zhu Yao immediately summoned her sword intent, and charged straight towards the direction of the light, instantly opening up a path. Hurry and get out! She shouted towards the two youths, and then looked towards the caterpillar's mouth. P. Only when a ray of green light flew out, did she finally charge out of the exit with her flying sword. In the next moment, loud rumbling sounds could be heard, and the ground had already caved in, forming a large crater. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Grandma. Little Bai suddenly called out to her in fear. What now? Zhu Yao raised her head, and was dumbfounded by the scene in front of her. Caterpillar. The ground was filled with gigantic caterpillars, forming a gigantic sea of caterpillars, and they were constantly rolling and moving about. They had actually barged into the caterpillar's nest. Zhu Yao simply felt goosebumps all over her body. In this situation where she was outnumbered, she could only run. After finding a direction, she flew off on her flying sword. Behind her, a large amount of slithering sounds could be heard. Zhu Yao flew even faster. "Grandma!" Little Tyrant pulled her. "What?" She madly flew all the way. "Why are we running? If we don't run, are we going to wait to be swallowed? But this is no longer a karst cave." Zhu Yao creaked as she stopped in midair. The hell, she had gotten used to running, and had forgotten about this point. Use fire to attack. Zhu Yao cast a fire-type mystic art in her hand, instantly forming a large sea of flames, burning towards the horde of caterpillars that were relentlessly chasing after them. Little Tyrant and Yi Qing-song materialized a large sea of flames as well, burning in that direction. In an instant, screams of pain resounded. In but an instant, the dense swarm of caterpillars earlier had already reduced by more than half. The rest no longer dared to escape either. They fled one after another. The smell of roasted meat floated in the air. The kind that was burnt, and it even faintly carried a thick rotting smell. It was extremely disgusting. "Grandma, these caterpillars, just what are they?" Little Bai panted heavily. His spiritual energy had already been completely depleted in that huge fire earlier. And Yi Qing-song was the same as well. However, their expressions were filled with shock. "I have never seen a demonic beast like that before. Those aren't demonic beasts." Zhu Yao sat down in a lotus position. After calming her breathing, she said, "No matter how low a demonic beast's rank is, its body will have a demonic aura. However, I couldn't sense the slightest bit of those caterpillars earlier. And not only were they demonic beasts, they didn't even have the aura of spiritual energy." Granny is saying, "Those are just simple caterpillars." "Were there caterpillars that big?" Zhu Yao nodded. "It's possible." She looked around. "This place isn't safe either. Let's hurry and leave." Who knew what else would come out? Without spiritual energy or demonic beasts, and she was just a foundation practitioner, she was basically unable to sense their presence in advance. Though those caterpillars were weak, there was no guarantee that they would be ambushed. Zhu Yao called out to the two of them. Just as she was about to move, something rolled towards her. Pee-pee. That basketball-sized pea was currently following her step by step. However, it did not return to the size of a fist, and continued to maintain the size of a basketball-sized ball. Earlier, she had vomited to such an extent, yet it was still able to grow. It wasn't easy. The corner of her lips twitched. She suddenly felt that she had gained a strange pet. However, others usually reared spiritual beasts, while she was rearing a pea. Zhu Yao faintly sensed that this unfamiliar place wasn't safe, but she never expected it to be this dangerous. The further they walked, the more strange creatures they encountered. Bees, mosquitoes, reptiles, spiders, and ants all came out. And as though they had taken drugs, they grew incredibly huge. They personally witnessed a mosquito that was as tall as a building suck dry an entire pond's water in a single gulp. And it even buzzed towards the river at the side, unwilling to give up. Zhu Yao felt that her worldview had been impacted. Should she be glad that this mosquito didn't drink blood? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.